Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto awakened the Angelic Ultra Bloodline of Saiyan and got the Harem of Marcarita. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening Beyond Limits. Dawn broke over Konohagakure with deceptive gentleness, golden light spilling across the stone faces of the Hokage monument. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the Hokage tower, cerulean, eyes fixed not on the awakening village below, but on the strange distortion rippling across the morning sky. For 3 days, this peculiar atmospheric phenomenon had hovered above the village, a subtle warping of reality visible only to those with the most sensitive chakra perception. "It's expanding," he murmured, the wind catching his white Hokage haori as he tracked the nearly imperceptible boundary where normal sky met. Something else. Not genjutsu, not any form of ninjutsu he recognized. Something fundamentally different. Shikamaru Nara stepped up beside him, his sharp eyes narrowed in calculation. Troublesome doesn't begin to cover it. The sensor division reports it's grown another 12% since yesterday. At this rate, I know. Naruto's voice carried the weight of leadership he'd grown into over the years. No longer the brash teenager but a man of 25 whose shoulders bore the responsibility of the entire village. Have the barrier team double the protective field's strength. And get me Hinata. Her Byakugan might see something we're missing. Shikamaru nodded, but before he could leave, both men froze. The distortion above them pulsed, emitting a silent wave of something. Not chakra, something older, primal. It washed over them like the aftershock of a thunderclap that made no sound. Naruto's skin prickled, Kurama stirring restlessly within him. "Kit, this energy, it's unlike anything I've felt in thousands of years of existence." Alert level 1, Naruto commanded, already forming a shadow clone to coordinate with Anbu. Full village lockdown. Now, the anomaly shimmered, stretching wider across the sky like a wound in reality itself, edges crystallizing into fractal patterns of impossible geometry. Within its center, darkness deepened, not the absence of light but something more fundamental, as though the very laws of the universe bent inward. Naruto moved with practiced efficiency, body flicker carrying him across rooftops. As alarm bells rang throughout the village, civilians moved toward shelters with orderly urgency, a testament to Konoha's hard-won peace that had allowed for proper emergency drills rather than constant war footing. Sasuke materialized beside him in a flicker of darkness, mismatched eyes trained on the phenomenon. "It's not Kagaya's dimension, not Otsutsuki either. I'd recognize their chakra signature." "What then?" Naruto asked, maintaining his pace as they crossed into the village center. "Something older." Sasuke's Rinnegan pulsed. "Something beyond our understanding of space-time." The distortion suddenly flared, brilliant light erupting from its center. The fractal patterns crystallized completely, locking into place with an audible crack that echoed across the village. The anomaly stabilized, now a perfect circular gateway suspended half a kilometer above the Hokage tower. Then came the silence, oppressive and absolute. Even the wind ceased, as though nature itself held its breath in anticipation. "Naruto-kun." Hinata landed beside them, her Byakugan already activated, veins bulging around her lavender eyes. There's nothing on the other side that I can see. It's as though my vision simply stops at the boundary." "Maintain distance," Naruto ordered as more shinobi gathered, Sakura, Kakashi, and a dozen Anbu elites forming a defensive perimeter. "No one approaches until we understand what." The portal pulsed, and something emerged. Not people, not creatures, entities composed of light and shadow, humanoid in shape but utterly alien in movement. They descended with eerie grace. 12 figures that seemed both solid and ephemeral simultaneously. Their forms solidified as they approached, revealing beings with pale blue skin, elaborate white and gold garments, and expressions of cold disdain. "Mortals," spoke the lead figure, voice resonating with harmonic undertones that made the air vibrate. "Your dimension has been compromised by forbidden energies. We come to excise the anomaly." Naruto stepped forward, chakra swirling visibly around him, golden energy tinged with Kurama's crimson power. "I am Naruto Uzumaki, 7th Hokage of Konohagakure. This is our home, and you will explain your presence before any excising happens. The entities regarded him with something between curiosity and contempt. Their leader, taller than the others, with elaborate horns crowning his head, lifted a hand casually. Energy gathered there, not chakra but something that made reality itself warp around it. Interesting, the entity said. You contain power beyond typical mortal boundaries, yet remain fundamentally limited. Your cooperation is unnecessary, merely your compliance or your absence. Sasuke's hand moved to his sword. They're not listening to reason, Naruto. So I see. Naruto's expression hardened, shoulders squaring as he slipped into the battlefield mindset that had carried him through wars and apocalyptic threats. Defensive Formation 3. Protect the civilians at all costs. The lead entity sighed, a sound like distant crystal chimes. Resistance. How tediously predictable. Without further warning, he flicked his wrist. The energy gathered there shot forward, not as a beam or projectile but as a distortion in space itself that carved through buildings and earth alike, leaving nothing but vacant emptiness in its wake. Naruto barely managed to push chakra to his feet, launching himself sideways as the attack obliterated the spot where he'd stood. Scatter, he shouted, already forming the hand sign for his signature technique. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Dozens of Naruto clones materialized, but 3 of the entities moved with impossible speed, not teleportation but movement so fluid and fast it appeared like afterimages smeared across reality. 3 clones burst into smoke before they could even fully form. Kurama, what are we dealing with? Naruto communicated mentally as he dodged another reality warping attack. These aren't chakra users, Kit. This is ki, life energy in its purest form. Gods use this. Gods. Naruto flipped backward, forming a Rasengan that collided with one entity's barrier, resulting explosion sending shockwaves across 3 city blocks. Not like the Sage or Kagaya. True divine beings from beyond our dimensional plane. Their power, it exists on a fundamentally different level than chakra. Across the village, chaos erupted as the entities spread out, each one engaging Konoha's elite forces. Sasuke's perfect Susanoo materialized, violet energy towering above buildings as he swung his ethereal sword at 2 entities, only for them to catch the blade between their hands as though it were made of paper. Sakura's chakra-enhanced punch connected with one being. The impact crater spreading 30 meters wide, but the entity merely rippled like water before reforming, unharmed. Our attacks aren't working, Kakashi shouted, his lightning blade passing harmlessly through another entity. They're operating on a different physical principle entirely. Naruto gritted his teeth, golden chakra flaring brighter as he entered 6 Paths Sage mode. With enhanced perception, he could now see the energy flowing through the entities, complex patterns of light that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Then we adapt. He formed a tailed beast ball Rasenshuriken. The destructive potential compressed into a deceptively small sphere. Everyone clear the area. He hurled the attack at the lead entity, who merely regarded it with mild interest before raising a single finger. The jutsu, capable of devastating mountains, froze in midair, suspended by an invisible force. Primitive energy manipulation, the entity mused, examining the attack like a curious artifact. Yet I sense potential in its framework. With a casual gesture, he dispersed Naruto's attack into harmless particles of light. Across the village, buildings crumbled as the invaders met, hodically carved through Konoha's defenses. Not with malice or cruelty, they displayed neither emotion, but with the cold efficiency of surgeons removing diseased tissue. Naruto watched in horror as entity raised both hands toward a residential district, energy gathering between their palms. No, he vanished in a yellow flash, the flying thunder god technique carrying him between the entity and the homes. Chakra arms erupted from his back, forming a protective barrier as the energy blast struck him directly. Pain beyond anything he'd ever experienced ripped through him. Not just physical agony, this attack seemed to disrupt the very cohesion of his chakra network, threatening to unravel the energy binding his physical form together. He dropped to one knee, blood streaming from his nose and ears, but kept the barrier intact. Behind him, he could hear civilians evacuating, children crying, parents calling names in panic. Fascinating resistance, said the entity, increasing the power output. But ultimately futile. Naruto felt something cracking inside him, not bones or tissue, but something more fundamental. His vision blurred, consciousness wavering under the assault. Harem A's healing chakra struggled to counteract damage occurring on a level beyond physical injury. Kit, your chakra system can't withstand this. It's breaking down your very essence. Asterisk. Through the haze of pain, Naruto saw Hinata engaging another entity, her gentle fist passing through their form with minimal effect. Sasuke's Amaterasu flames washed over two others, black fire seemingly contained within bubbles of distorted space. Sakura lay unconscious, Kakashi standing protectively over her, his Sharingan spinning frantically as he attempted to analyze any weakness. His people, his village, his responsibility. Something shifted within Naruto then. Not chakra, not even the familiar power of the tailed beasts or Six Paths Sage chakra. Something deeper, something that had always existed within him but remained dormant until this precise moment of existential crisis. Heat rushed through his body, starting at his core and expanding outward. His vision sharpened beyond normal perception, colors intensifying until he could see spectrums beyond human capability. Time itself seemed to slow, the entity's energy attack decelerating until Naruto could perceive individual particles of light within it. Kit, your chakra is transforming. Kurama's voice echoed with genuine shock. This isn't sage mode or tailed beast power, this is something beyond both. Asterisk. Naruto stood slowly, the pain receding as new energy suffused every cell of his body. Silver-white chakra. No, not chakra, something purer, began emanating from him in gentle waves. His hair lifted slightly, flickering between his normal blonde and a silvery white that seemed to contain light itself. The entity attacking him paused, genuine surprise registering on its alien features. Impossible, it whispered. A mortal accessing. Naruto moved, not with conscious thought or strategic planning, his body simply responded to the threat with perfect efficiency. One moment he stood absorbing the entity's attack, the next, he materialized behind it. Hand extended in a precise strike to the back of its neck. The entity whirled with impossible speed, but somehow Naruto was faster still, adjusting his attack trajectory without conscious thought. His palm connected, and for the first time, he made physical contact with one of these beings. The impact sent shockwaves across the village, a thunderclap of colliding energies that shattered windows and cracked stone. The entity flew backward, crashing through 3 buildings before stabilizing itself, genuine alarm now evident in its expression. Lord Ezra, shouted another entity, the mortal has accessed the instinct. The lead entity, Ezra, steadied himself, eyes narrowing as he studied Naruto with new intensity. So I see. Most unexpected. Most concerning. Naruto stood amid the destruction. Silver-white energy flowing around him like liquid light. His consciousness felt split. Part of him still the calculating Hokage analyzing the threat, another part operate. On pure instinct at a level beyond thought. His body moved with perfect economy of motion, not a single twitch wasted as he prepared for the next exchange. Ezra gestured, and the other entities regrouped around him. Abandoning their individual battles. Change of strategy, he announced. This mortal has somehow accessed divine energy patterns. Containment Protocol 7. The 12 entities arranged themselves in a perfect circle, energy flowing between them to form a complex geometric pattern. The air thickened with power, reality itself bending around their combined might. Inside Naruto, Kurama growled. Whatever they're doing, it's big. Really big. That energy signature, it could wipe out the entire land of fire. Asterisk. But rather than fear, Naruto felt an unexpected calm. The silver energy hummed through him, responding to his protective instincts without requiring conscious direction. His body was already moving, hands forming seals he somehow knew despite never having learned them. Everyone fall back to the mountain. He shouted, voice carrying with unusual resonance. I'll handle this. Sasuke landed beside him, blood streaming from one eye as he maintained his Susanoo. Whatever you're doing, Naruto. That power, it's not like anything I've ever seen. I know, I don't fully understand it either, but Naruto's body suddenly moved on its own again, sidestepping an invisible attack that materialized a split second later, but I think it understands me. Sasuke studied him for barely a heartbeat before nodding. We'll evacuate the civilians. Don't die, Idiot. The unspoken trust between them remained their greatest strength, forged through years of shared battles and sacrifices. As Konoha's defenders retreated with the civilians, Naruto stood alone before the 12 entities. Their combined power now forming a sphere of energy that distorted light around its edges. Within it, he could perceive what looked like a miniature galaxy forming, each point of light a concentrated destruction potential that would annihilate everything for hundreds of kilometers. Your interference is unprecedented, mortal, Ezra stated flatly. But ultimately irrelevant. This dimension has been compromised by divine energy leakage. Purification is the only option. This is my home, Naruto replied, the silver energy pulsing more strongly around him. And I won't let you destroy it without understanding why. Understanding is not required for your species. Merely acceptance of cosmic order. Ezra raised both hands, the sphere of destruction growing larger. Your awakening merely confirms the contamination has spread further than anticipated. The attack launched, not as a beam or explosion but as a fundamental rewriting of space itself, erasing everything in its path from existence. It moved with terrible purpose toward Naruto, who stood his ground, the silver energy now forming a visible aura around his body. Time slowed for him again. He could see the attack's complex structure. The interwoven energies designed to unravel the very fabric of his dimension. But rather than panic, his body simply responded. His hands moved in patterns that felt ancient yet familiar, tracing symbols in the air that left trails of silver light. The energy flowing through him wasn't being directed by his conscious mind but by something deeper, a bodily wisdom that transcended thought. As the destructive sphere reached him, Naruto completed the final symbol. The silver energy erupted from him in a perfect countering wave, meeting the attack in a collision that briefly tore open the sky itself. Light blinded everyone within 50 kilometers. The ground beneath Konoha shuddered as though the planet itself recoiled from the energy exchange. When vision returned, a perfect hemisphere of destruction extended from where Naruto stood, buildings, earth, even the air itself stripped away to create an exact half-sphere of nothingness 30 meters deep. Why? Konoha itself remained largely intact beyond this boundary, Naruto standing at the perfect center, silver energy still flowing around him in gentle waves. Across from him, the 12 entities had been pushed back, their perfect formation disrupted, several displaying visible damage to their forms. Ezra stared at Naruto with what could only be described as stunned disbelief. You contained and redirected a celestial erasure. No mortal has ever. He trailed off, reassessing the situation entirely. What are you? Naruto met his gaze steadily. I am Naruto Uzumaki, 7th Hokage of Konohagakure. And I will protect my people, from anyone or anything. The silver energy continued flowing through him, but he could feel it beginning to strain his body. Whatever this power was, his mortal form wasn't fully equipped to channel it for extended periods. Already his muscles burned with microscopic tears, his nervous system beginning to fray under the divine current. Ezra seemed to perceive this, his expression calculating. Your awakening is premature, incomplete. You cannot maintain that state for long. Long enough, Naruto countered, though he knew the entity spoke truth. Whatever this power was, it was consuming him from within even as it empowered him. Inside, Kurama worked frantically to stabilize Naruto's chakra network. Kid, this energy is rewriting your very essence. I'm trying to adapt, but it's like nothing I've ever encountered. Asterisk. A new voice suddenly cut through the tension, melodic, authoritative, and distinctly feminine. That's quite enough, Lord Ezra. They exceeded your authority in this realm. The dimensional portal above pulsed again, and a new figure descended. Unlike the others, she moved with graceful precision, her appearance both regal and otherworldly. Pale blue skin contrasted with her white hair, styled in an elaborate updo with a halo-like ring floating above. Her attire, elegant robes of blue and gold, fluttered around her despite the absence of wind. Most striking was the staff she carried, a long scepter topped with a floating orb that hummed with power beyond even what the 12 entities had displayed. Angel Marcarita, Ezra acknowledged, immediately adopting a more deferential posture. We were merely addressing a divine energy contamination as per protocol. By attempting to erase an entire dimension, her tone remained pleasant, but carried an undercurrent of authority that made the entities shrink back slightly. The Grand Priest will be most displeased to learn of such overreach. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, eyes widening slightly as she took in the silver energy still flowing around him. Most fascinating. A mortal accessing Ultra Instinct. Completely unprecedented. Naruto maintained his defensive stance, though the strain of holding this new power was becoming increasingly evident. Small fissures began appearing on his skin, leaking silver light instead of blood. Marcarita approached him, moving. With such fluid grace she appeared to glide rather than walk. You can release that form now, Hokage Naruto Uzumaki. I assure you, no further destruction will be permitted here today. And I should trust you because? Naruto asked, the silver energy flaring protectively. A smile touched her lips, not warm, exactly, but not unkind either. Because if I wished this dimension harm, your newfound power, impressive as it is, would provide no meaningful resistance. She inclined her head slightly. And because, unlike Lord Ezra and his celestial guards, I recognize the significance of what you've accomplished and find myself curious. Something in her manner, the directness of her gaze, perhaps, or the subtle respect in her tone, convinced Naruto she spoke truth. With careful concentration, he attempted to release the silver energy. It proved more difficult than expected. Unlike chakra, which responded readily to his will, this power seemed to have its own properties and resistance. Finally, with Kurama's assistance from within, the silver aura faded, receding into his body like water absorbed into parched earth. The moment it fully dissipated, exhaustion crashed over him with crushing intensity. His knees buckled, vision tunneling as his body registered the microscopic damage throughout his entire cellular structure. Only ingrained shinobi reflexes kept him from collapsing completely. Marcarita observed with clinical interest. The first manifestation is always the most taxing. Your body hasn't adapted to channeling divine ki yet. What happened to me? Naruto managed, each word requiring concerted effort. A discussion better had once you've recovered, she replied. For now, she turned to the 12 entities, who had regrouped behind Ezra. Lord Ezra, you will return to Universe 11 immediately. The Grand Priest will address your unauthorized incursion. Ezra bowed stiffly. We acted on information that divine energy had leaked into this dimension, threatening cosmic stability. And I will investigate that claim, Marcarita countered smoothly. Your services are no longer required. The entities exchanged glances before Ezra nodded reluctantly. As you command, Angel Marcarita. But the council will hear of the mortal's awakening. I would expect nothing less. Her smile remained pleasant but carried unmistakable dismissal. With a final suspicious glance at Naruto, Ezra and his companions ascended toward the dimensional portal, their forms becoming translucent before disappearing entirely into the rift. The portal itself contracted slightly but remained open. Naruto swayed on his feet, strength rapidly abandoning him. His vision blurred, the aftereffects of channeling divine energy ravaging his body despite Kurama's best efforts to heal the damage. Marcarita stepped closer, studying him with detached fascination. Your life force is remarkably resilient. Most mortals would have been completely obliterated by channeling even a fraction of that power. Lucky me, Naruto managed with weak sarcasm, fighting to remain conscious. What was that? What did I do? Before she could answer, multiple figures landed around them, Sasuke, Hinata, Kakashi, and other elite shinobi forming a protective perimeter around their Hokage. Their expressions reflected equal measures of concern for Naruto and wariness toward the celestial visitor. Naruto. Hinata rushed to his side, Byakugan activated as she assessed his condition. Your chakra network is changed. Completely altered in structure. Sasuke's Rinnegan focused on Marcarita, his hand resting on his sword. Who are you? What have you done to him? I've done nothing, she replied calmly, apparently unperturbed by the hostility directed her way. Your Hokage accomplished this transformation entirely on his own, though I admit, it's a development that should have been theoretically impossible. Speak plainly, Kakashi demanded, his single exposed eye narrowed in suspicion. Marcarita sighed softly, a sound like distant wind chimes. Very well, your dimension exists within a much larger multiverse, organized into 12 distinct universes, each with its own hierarchy of planets, realms, and divine beings. I am Marcarita, angel attendant to Belmod, the god of destruction for Universe 11. She gestured toward Naruto with her staff. What your Hokage managed to do, accessing Ultra Instinct. A divine technique previously exclusive to the highest celestial beings, represents an unprecedented evolution in mortal capability. It suggests either your dimension H has been exposed to divine energy for some time, or her gaze sharpened on Naruto, or he possesses innate qualities that transcend normal mortal limitations. Naruto struggled to process this information through his exhaustion. Gods of destruction, other universes. A simplified explanation, but accurate enough for now. Marcarita's attention shifted to the dimensional portal above. More concerning is that rift. It should not exist. Travel between universes is strictly regulated by Zeno and the Grand Priest. Can you close it? Sasuke asked, pragmatic as always. Not immediately. Its structure suggests it formed naturally, a weakening in the dimensional barriers rather than deliberate creation. Such phenomena require careful examination before closure, lest the dimensional fabric tear further. A tremor ran through Naruto's body, silver energy briefly flickering across his skin before subsiding. The effort of maintaining consciousness was becoming too much, his newly altered chakra network struggling to stabilize. Hinata supported him as he sagged further. He needs medical attention immediately. Marcarita considered this. Conventional medicine will prove ineffective for his condition. His body is undergoing a fundamental transformation at the cellular level, adapting to channel divine ki. We have excellent medical ninjutsu, Sakura interjected, having recovered enough to join them. I trained under Lady Tsunade herself. Admirable, but insufficient, Marcarita replied without condescension. However, I can assist in stabilizing his condition temporarily. May I? She directed this last question to Naruto himself, staff hovering near his chest. Despite his weakened state, Naruto remained alert enough to understand the significance of her asking permission. Whatever else she might be, this celestial being showed him the respect of choice. He nodded once, conserving his diminishing energy. Marcarita touched her staff gently to his chest. A soft blue light emanated from the orb, flowing into Naruto's body like water seeking equilibrium. The effect was immediate. The pain receded, his breathing steadied, and the microscopic tears in his cellular structure began knitting together. This is merely temporary stabilization, she explained, withdrawing her staff. The fundamental changes to your energy system will continue, but at a more sustainable pace that won't destroy your mortal form in the process. Thank you, Naruto managed, strength returning enough for him to stand under his own power again, though Hinata remained supportively at his side. Marcarita inclined her head slightly. Your awakening presents questions that require investigation. While Lord Ezra overreacted catastrophically, his core concern wasn't entirely misplaced. Divine energy leaking into mortal dimensions can have unpredictable consequences. She gazed around at the village. Buildings damaged, craters carved into the earth, citizens watching warily from safe distances. Your world now stands at a crossroads, Hokage Naruto Uzumaki. The barriers between dimensions have weakened, and your awakening of Ultra Instinct will not go unnoticed by higher powers across the multiverse. Meaning, Kakashi prompted when she paused. Meaning your isolated existence has ended, she stated simply. For better or worse, your dimension has joined the cosmic awareness. Some will be curious, others threatened. Some may seek to study your unique evolution, others to exploit or eliminate it. Naruto straightened fully, the mantle of leadership settling back. On his shoulders despite his physical exhaustion. We've faced threats before. We'll adapt. Indeed. Marcarita studied him with renewed interest. Your confidence isn't entirely misplaced. The power you accessed, however briefly, Ultra Instinct, represents one of the highest forms of combat mastery in existence. Even most gods cannot achieve it. Then how did I? Naruto began. That, Marcarita said, is precisely what I intend to discover. She glanced up at the dimensional rift. With your permission, I will remain in your dimension temporarily. My presence should deter further incursions like Lord Ezra's, and I can assist in understanding both your transformation and the dimensional anomaly. Naruto exchanged glances with his advisors. Shikamaru, ever practical, gave a slight nod. Sasuke remained suspicious but didn't object outright. Kakashi's expression suggested cautious acceptance of necessity. You're welcome to stay, Naruto decided, though we'll need to establish some ground rules. A hint of amusement flickered across Marcarita's features. How very diplomatic. Very well, Hokage. We shall establish these ground rules once you've rested. Your body requires time to adjust to the changes occurring within it. She turned her attention to the dimensional rift above, staff raised toward it. For now, I will stabilize this portal to prevent further unauthorized travel. We can discuss longer-term solutions afterward. As she focused on the task, Naruto leaned slightly toward Shikamaru. Have Anbu establish a perimeter. Civilian reconstruction teams for damaged areas. And call an emergency meeting of all Jonin and clan heads for tomorrow morning. Already on it, Shikamaru confirmed quietly. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Hosting a self-proclaimed divine being. Not entirely, Naruto admitted, but she did stop those others from erasing our entire dimension. And whatever happened to me, I need answers. Hinata, still at his side, spoke softly. Your chakra network has completely restructured itself, Naruto-kun. The energy flowing through you now, it's unlike anything I've ever seen with my Byakugan. It's as though your entire being exists partially in another dimension. Naruto glanced down at his hands, where occasional sparks of silver energy still danced across his skin like lightning. It felt strange, not like Sage Mode or Kurama's chakra, more like my body was moving on its own, with perfect precision. Ultra Instinct, Marcarita commented, evidently able to hear their conversation despite the distance and her focus on the portal. The state of mind where consciousness transcends thought itself, allowing the body to respond with perfect efficiency without the limitations of cognitive processes. The ultimate martial technique, typically mastered only after millions of years of training, if at all. She completed whatever stabilization she had been performing on the portal, which now pulsed with a more regular rhythm. Its edges clearly defined rather than ragged and volatile. Turning back to the gathered shinobi, she continued, which makes your achievement all the more remarkable, Hokage. Partiku, largely since your dimension shouldn't have been exposed to divine ki at all, given its relative isolation in the cosmic framework. There have been god-like entities in our history, Kakashi offered cautiously. The Sage of Six Paths, Kagaya Otsutsuki, others from the celestial realm who came to Earth long ago. Marcarita's expression sharpened with sudden interest. Otsutsuki, that name, it carries interdimensional resonance. She studied Naruto more intently. Perhaps there are connections I hadn't considered. This requires further investigation. Naruto swayed slightly, the temporary stabilization Marcarita had provided beginning to wane as exhaustion reasserted itself. Inside, he could feel Kurama's presence, unusually quiet, as though the fox was deeply focused on understanding the changes to their shared chakra system. Investigation can wait, Sakura intervened firmly, medical training overriding protocol as she stepped forward. He needs rest, divine transformation or not. Surprisingly, Marcarita nodded in agreement. Indeed, the initial awakening of Ultra Instinct places tremendous strain on a mortal form. Rest is essential for proper integration of the energies now circulating through his system. She made a graceful gesture with her staff, and a small crystalline object materialized in the air before gently floating down into her palm. She extended it toward Naruto, a perfect cube that seemed to contain swirling silver light within its transparent structure. Place this near you while you rest. It will help stabilize the divine energy as your body adapts. Naruto accepted it cautiously, feeling a resonance between the energy in the cube and what now flowed through his own body. Thank you. I shall remain here to monitor the dimensional rift, Marcarita stated. We can resume our discussion once you've recovered sufficient strength. With exhaustion finally overwhelming even his legendary stamina, Naruto allowed himself to be escorted from the battlefield by his friends and advisors. As they departed, he glanced back one last time at the celestial visitor and the shimmering portal above the village. Kurama, what do you make of all this? He asked silently. The fox's response came slowly, thoughtfully. I've existed for thousands of years, Kit, but even I never knew of these other universes or divine beings beyond the Otsutsuki. Whatever you've awakened, it's changed everything. The question is whether for better or worse. Helpful as always, Naruto thought wryly. One thing I know for certain, Kurama continued, unusually serious. That power you channeled, this ultra instinct, it's rewriting your very essence. You're becoming something new, Something neither human nor tailed beast. Something beyond. Naruto contemplated this as they reached the Hokage residence, the crystal cube pulsing gently in his palm. Looking up at the dimensional rift visible even from this distance, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of something far larger than even he, with all his experience facing world-ending threats, could comprehend. 3 days passed before Naruto fully recovered from the aftermath of accessing Ultra Instinct. Throughout his convalescence, strange phenomena manifested around him, objects floating momentarily when his emotions spiked, random bursts of silver energy crackling across his skin during sleep. Moments where his perception expanded beyond normal sensory limits. Sakura monitored his condition with growing fascination and concern, documenting changes to his chakra network that defied conventional medical understanding. Hinata's Byakugan revealed an evolution in his energy pathways, no longer simply channeling chakra but something more fundamental, as though his very life force had transformed in structure. On the morning of the 4th day, Naruto stood before the mirror in his private quarters, studying his reflection with careful attention. Physically, he appeared unchanged, the same blue eyes, blonde hair, and whisker marks he'd always had. Yet something subtle had shifted in his bearing, a fluidity to his movements that hadn't existed before. When he channeled chakra, flickers of silver now intermingled with the golden energy of his 6 paths sage mode. Kurama had integrated somewhat with this new power, though the fox remained unusually contemplative about the transformation. A soft knock at his door interrupted his examination. "Enter," he called, turning from the mirror. Shikamaru stepped inside, expression suggesting both relief at seeing Naruto recovered and concern over new developments. "You're looking better." "Feeling better too," Naruto confirmed, rolling his shoulders experimentally. "What's the situation?" "Stable, for now." Shikamaru ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of stress from the typically composed strategist. "The dimensional rift hasn't expanded further. Our visitor has been monitoring it constantly. She's also been answering questions about this multiverse we apparently exist within." "And what do you think of her?" "Troublesome," Shikamaru replied predictably, but then elaborated, "incredibly knowledgeable. Clearly powerful beyond anything we've encountered, but not openly hostile. She seems genuinely curious about you and this world. Though there's something distant about her. Inhuman in her perspective." Naruto nodded, having sensed the same during their brief interaction. "Any word from the other villages?" "All on high alert after sensing the energy release. The dimensional rift is visible for hundreds of kilometers. I've sent preliminary explanations to the other cage, but..." Shikamaru shrugged. "Hard to explain cosmic gods and parallel universes in a mission brief. I'll need to address the Alliance personally," Naruto decided, already calculating the diplomatic implications. "Where is Marcarita now?" "At the rift site. She's created some kind of observation platform in midair. Hasn't eaten, slept, or taken any breaks that we've observed." Shikamaru paused. "She's been asking to speak with you once you've recovered." "Then I shouldn't keep her waiting." Naruto moved toward the door. But Shikamaru's voice stopped him. "Naruto, what exactly happened to you out there? I've never seen power like what you displayed." Naruto considered the question carefully. "I'm not entirely sure myself." In that moment, when everything was at stake, something awakened. Something that might have always been there, dormant. He flexed his fingers, a faint silver glow momentarily illuminating his skin. "Whatever it is, I need to understand it if I'm going to protect our people from whatever comes next." Shikamaru studied him for a moment before nodding. "Just be careful. Gods and dimensions and cosmic power. It's a far cry from the simple days of just fighting the Akatsuki or alien moon princesses." The dry humor masked genuine concern. "When have I ever not been careful?" Naruto grinned, momentarily the same brash ninja Shikamaru had known since childhood. "Do you want the list alphabetically or chronologically?" Shikamaru retorted, but his expression lightened slightly. Together they made their way through the village toward the site of the dimensional rift. Civilians had largely returned to normal activities, though many paused to bow respectfully to their Hokage as he passed, some with expressions of relief at seeing him recovered, others with barely concealed awe after witnessing his transformation days earlier. Reconstruction. Efforts were well underway in damaged areas, Yamato's wood style particularly valuable in rebuilding structural foundations. Naruto made mental notes to personally thank the teams working tirelessly to restore normalcy. As they approached the center of the village, the dimensional rift came into full view, a perfect circle of distorted space roughly 30 meters in diameter, suspended above the Hokage Tower. True to Shikamaru's report, Marcarita had created a platform of crystalline energy directly beneath it, where she stood motionless, staff raised toward the anomaly. Naruto leapt upward, channeling chakra to his feet to land softly on the platform's edge. Close up, the rift was even more disquieting, not simply a hole in reality but a boundary where the fundamental laws of physics seemed to fold inward, creating visual distortions that hurt the eyes if observed too directly. Hokage Naruto Uzumaki, Marcarita acknowledged without turning, her attention remaining fixed on the rift. Your recovery progressed more quickly than anticipated. Most impressive for a mortal physiology. I've always healed fast, Naruto replied, studying her profile. In daylight, her otherworldly Nadu Ri was even more apparent. The subtle luminescence of her blue skin, the perfect stillness with which she could maintain her position, the halo-like ring hovering above her elaborate coiffure. Indeed, the symbiotic relationship with your internal energy being, Kurama, I believe you call him, provides remarkable regenerative capabilities. Combined with your Uzumaki lineage and the residual energy from the six paths, your baseline resilience exceeds normal human limitations by several orders of magnitude. She spoke casually, as though reciting commonly known facts. Naruto blinked in surprise. You've been studying me, of course. Now she did turn, lowering her staff as she faced him fully. You represent a fascinating anomaly, Hokage. A mortal who has accessed Ultra Instinct, however briefly. Such an occurrence has significant implications for cosmic balance. You keep mentioning this, Ultra Instinct. What exactly is it? Marcarita considered him thoughtfully before responding. It exists beyond simple explanation. But I shall attempt clarity. Ultra Instinct is the state of perfect martial harmony, where consciousness transcends thought entirely, allowing the body to act and react with absolute precision. It is not merely a technique but a transformation of being, a state where limitation falls away and pure instinct guides every movement. She gestured toward him with her staff. The silver energy you manifested is the physical representation of this state, divine ki in its purest form, typically accessible only to the highest celestial beings after millions of years of training. Even most gods of destruction cannot fully master it. Yet I somehow accessed it in a moment of crisis, Naruto mused. Precisely my interest. Marcarita studied him with clinical intensity. By all cosmic principles, it should have been impossible. Mortals simply lack the physiological framework to channel divine ki without being obliterated in the process. So why wasn't I? That, she replied, is what I intend to discover. Your dimension has been isolated from the primary multiverse structure for millennia, evolving independently along its own energetic principles. This chakra, your people utilize, it bears certain similarities to ki, yet functions through fundamentally different mechanisms. She began walking slowly around him, staff occasionally extending to Maya's. You are some invisible quality in the air surrounding his body. My preliminary analysis suggests your chakra network, particularly as modified by your experiences with the six paths power and the tailed beast within you, created a unique energetic architecture capable of temporarily supporting divine ki flow. Naruto followed her explanation with surprising ease. Years of Hokage briefings had trained him to process complex information efficiently. So it was a fluke. A one-time occurrence. Unlikely. Marcarita completed her circuit around him, returning to stand directly before him. The Chang's to your energy system appear permanent. More importantly, your body is actively adapting to accommodate this new power rather than rejecting it. Given proper training and guidance, you could ally access Ultra Instinct again, with greater control and less physical strain. Something in her tone caught Naruto's attention. You sound like you're offering to provide that training. A subtle smile curved her lips. Perceptive. Yes, I am proposing exactly that. Your awakening coinciding with the appearance of this dimensional rift cannot be mere coincidence. Cosmic occurrences of this magnitude are invariably interconnected. And what would you gain from training me? Knowledge. She answered without hesitation. As angel attendant to a god of destruction, my primary purpose includes observing, analyzing, and recording significant cosmic developments. A mortal accessing Ultra Instinct qualifies as perhaps the most significant development in this quadrant of the multiverse in several million years. Naruto considered this, glancing up at the dimensional rift pulsing above them. And this portal, can it be closed? Eventually, yes. However, its spontaneous formation STS underlying instabilities in the dimensional barriers surrounding your world. Closing it prematurely could potentially cause greater disruptions. She turned back toward the rift, staff raised once more. More concerning are the implications of its appearance. Such dimensional weakening typically occurs only during major cosmic realignments or, she paused, expression growing more serious. Quote, or when deliberate interference has occurred. Meaning someone might have created this rift intentionally. Naruto asked, strategic mind immediately assessing potential threats. It's a possibility that cannot be dismissed. Marcarita acknowledged. The timing, coinciding precisely with your awakening of Ultra Instinct, suggests potential causality in one direction or the other. Inside, Naruto felt Kurama stirring with unease. I don't like this, Kit. Cosmic gods, dimensional rifts, we're moving into territory even I don't understand. Asterisk. All the more reason to learn everything we can, asterisk Naruto replied silently. If there are threats coming from beyond our dimension, we need to be prepared. Asterisk. Aloud, he asked, what would this training involve? Initially, understanding the fundamental difference between chakra and divine ki, Marcarita explained. While both are expressions of life energy, they function through different principles and produce different effects. Your unique positi on, having mastery of one and nascent access to the other, creates possibilities previously unconsidered in cosmic theory. She lowered her staff, turning her full attention to him. I propose a mutual exchange. I will train you to understand and eventually control Ultra Instinct, while studying how your particular physiology has achieved what should be theoretically impossible. In return, I rex access to your historical records regarding these, Otsutsuki, beings and the development of chakra on your world. That seems reasonable, Naruto acknowledged, though some information may be classified or lost to history. Understandable. All knowledge has its limits. Marcarita glanced toward the village below, where civilians went about their daily lives seemingly unperturbed by the cosmic anomaly hovering above them. Your people are remarkably adaptable. Most mortal civilizations would descend into chaos upon learning of the multiverse. We've faced our share of world-ending threats, Naruto said with a hint of pride. Alien invasions, moon goddesses, infinite illusions. You learn to roll with it after a while. Something like amusement flickered across Marcarita's features. Indeed, perhaps that adaptability contributes to your unique development. She turned suddenly, staff pointing toward the dimensional rift as it pulsed with increased intensity. Interesting. The RTAL is responding to your proximity, specifically, to the residual divine key within your system. Naruto felt it too, a subtle resonance between the energy flowing through him and the rift above, like harmonizing frequencies. Is that dangerous? Not immediately, though it confirms my hypothesis of correlation between your awakening and the rift's appearance. Marcarita studied the interaction with analytical precision. This could potentially provide a method for eventually stabilizing and closing the portal, once your control over divine ki has developed sufficiently. A thought occurred to Naruto. These other universes you mentioned, what are they like? Are there other worlds like ours? 12 distinct universes comprise the primary multiverse, Marcarita explained, apparently willing to satisfy his curiosity. Each contains countless galaxies, solar systems, and planets, some with intelligent life, others without. The fundamental laws of physics remain largely consistent across all 12, though specific evolutionary paths vary considerably. Her expression grew thoughtful. Your dimension appears to exist within Universe 7, though in an isolated pocket that has remained disconnected from the main cosmic structure. This isolation may explain how your world developed chakra rather than conventional ki manipulation. And these gods of destruction, what exactly do they do? Naruto couldn't help but feel concerned at the title. They maintain cosmic balance through selective destruction, Marcarita stated matter-of-factly. When civilizations, planets, or systems become detrimental to universal harmony, Gods of destruction remove them from existence. This promotes healthy cosmic evolution and prevents stagnation. Naruto frowned. That sounds rather arbitrary. Who decides what deserves destruction? Quote, the gods themselves, guided by cosmic principles and the wisdom of millions of years of existence. Marcarita studied his reaction with interest. Your Disa, P. Proval suggests a limited temporal perspective, Hokage. From a cosmic viewpoint, destruction is neither good nor evil, merely necessary for continued creation and evolution. I've never accepted chi suffering or destruction as simply necessary, Naruto countered firmly. There's always another path for those willing to search for it. Rather than dismissing his perspective, Marcarita regarded him with increased curiosity. A philosophical position typical of mortals, yet you express it with unusual conviction. Perhaps this ideological framework contributed to your unlikely awakening. Before Naruto could respond, a flare of energy pulsed from the rift, bathing the platform in prismatic light. Marcarita immediately raised her staff defensively, moving with such speed she appeared to teleport directly beneath the portal. Another incursion, she announced, voice carrying despite the growing distortion around the rift. Something is attempting to pass through from the other side. Naruto's body reacted instinctively, moving into a defensive stance as golden chakra flared around him, intermingled with flickering traces of silver divine energy. Despite having recovered physically from his previous transformation, he wasn't certain he could access Ultra Instinct again deliberately, especially after Marcarita's explanation of its rarity even among celestial beings. The dimensional rift expanded slightly, its edges fluctuating with unstable energy. From within its center, a single figure emerged, tall, slender, with pale green skin and white hair styled in an elaborate mohawk. Unlike Marcarita's elegant attire, this newcomer wore formal black and maroon robes with a high collar, his expression one of perpetual disdain. Angel Marcarita, the figure acknowledged as he descended to the platform. The Grand Priest requires your presence regarding the incident in Universe 7. Angel Whis, Marcarita returned the greeting with a formal incline of her head. I am Curran, TLY investigating both the dimensional anomaly and a significant cosmic development. She gestured toward Naruto. This mortal has accessed Ultra Instinct. Whis turned his attention to Naruto, studying him with sudden intense interest. Most unusual. I sense the residual energy signature, though currently dormant. A mortal channeling divine ki should have resulted in complete molecular destabilization. Precisely the phenomenon I am investigating, Marcarita confirmed. His unique physiological structure and energy system appear capable of supporting divine ki flow, at least temporarily. Fascinating. Whis approached Naruto directly, his staff emitting a soft glow as he conducted some form of analysis. The Grand Priest will certainly wish to know of this development. However, the situation with Lord Ezra's unauthorized incursion takes precedence. The dimensional stability of Universe 7 has been compromised by his actions. Naruto, sensing the conversation happening somewhat over his head, interjected firmly. Excuse me, but this is still my village and my dimension we're discussing. I'd appreciate being included in any decisions that affect our safety. Both angels turned to him with mild surprise, as though they'd momentarily forgotten the relevance of local authority. Whis recovered first, offering a slight bow that somehow managed to seem both respectful and condescending simultaneously. Of course, Hokage Naruto Uzumaki, my apologies for the oversight. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Whis, angel attendant to Lord Beerus, god of destruction for Uni. Verse 7. The universe within which your dimension technically exists, though in an isolated pocket. So this is your jurisdiction? Naruto asked pointedly. In a manner of speaking, yes, though your dimension's isolation has placed it outside normal cosmic observation until now. Whis glanced at the dimensional rift. This portal represents a significant breach in that isolation, potentially disrupting the delicate balance maintained across Universe 7. Marcarita interjected smoothly. I've stabilized the rift temporarily to prevent further unauthorized travel. However, permanent resolution will require more extensive intervention. Indeed. Whis turned back to Naruto. Hokage, the Grand Priest, Supreme Advisor to Zeno, ruler of the multiverse, has taken personal interest in these developments. Your dimension's sudden emergence into cosmic awareness, combined with your unprecedented access to Ultra Instinct, represents a situation without precedent. Meaning, Naruto prompted, already anticipating complications. Meaning decisions regarding your dimension's integration into the broader cosmic structure will require careful consideration at the highest levels. Whis' expression remained neutral, but his tone suggested the seriousness of the situation. Under normal circumstances, a civilization abruptly accessing divine power might be considered for preemptive management. Naruto's eyes narrowed. If that's a euphemism for destruction, you should know we've faced extinction-level threats before. We're still here. To his surprise, Whis smiled slightly. Your confidence isn't entirely misplaced, Hokage. Your world has indeed overcome remarkable challenges. However, the cosmic hierarchy operates on scales beyond normal mortal comprehension. He turned to Marcarita. The Grand Priest proposes you continue your investigation here while I address Lord Ezra's incursion. A formal evaluation of this dimension's stability and the mortal's Ultra Instinct Manifesta Chion will be conducted before any decisions are finalized. Acceptable, Marcarita agreed. I've already begun preliminary training and analysis protocols. Excellent. Whis raised his staff, preparing to depart. I shall inform the Grand Priest of your progress. He may wish to observe personally if developments warrant. With a final nod to Naruto, he ascended toward the dimensional rift, his form becoming translucent before disappearing entirely. Silence hung between them for several moments after his departure. Finally, Naruto spoke, his voice carrying the weight of responsibility for an entire world. How serious is this threat of preemptive management? Marcarita considered her response carefully. Under cosmic law, mortal dimensions accessing divine energy without proper evolutionary development are typically considered destabilizing elements in the universal ecosystem. In most cases, gods of destruction would be dispatched to eliminate the anomaly. But, Naruto prompted, sensing qualification in her tone. But your situation presents unprecedented variables. The manner of your awakening, the unique properties of chakra, your dimension's historical isolation, all suggest special circumstances the council must consider fully before judgment. She studied him thoughtfully. Additionally, your personal accomplishment in accessing Ultra Instinct, however briefly, represents a theoretical impossibility made manifest. Such rarities typically receive special consideration. You're saying they might spare our dimension because I'm an interesting research subject? Naruto's voice carried a hint of indignation. I'm saying your uniqueness creates opportunity for alternative resolutions, Marcarita corrected smoothly. If I can demonstrate that your awakening represents controlled evolution rather than cosmic instability, the case for preservation becomes substantially stronger. Naruto processed this, the implications crystallizing with uncomfortable clarity. So our survival depends on my mastering this power. An oversimplification, but not entirely inaccurate. Marcarita's expression softened marginally, the first real emotion she'd displayed. I would not have offered training if I believed success impossible, Hokage. Something in your fundamental nature resonates with Ultra Instinct in ways I've never observed in a mortal being. She gestured toward the village below. Your people have developed remarkable adaptability and resilience. This dimension contains energetic properties unlike any I've encountered in 12 universes of observation. The potential here intrigues me. Coming from a being who had apparently existed for millions of years, the admission of genuine interest carried significant weight. Naruto straightened. Decision made. Then we begin immediately. Whatever training you recommend, I'm ready. Excellent. Marcarita raised her staff, creating a circular barrier of energy around the platform, isolating them from outside observation. The first principle of divine key manipulation is understanding the fundamental difference between energy projection and energy embodiment. As she began explaining NCEPTS that challenge the very foundations of chakra theory, Naruto focused with complete attention, the weight of his village's fate, perhaps his entire dimension's survival, resting on his ability to master power that, according to cosmic law, no mortal should possess. Inside, Kurama listened with equal concentration, the ancient fox's knowledge providing context and comparisons that helped translate celestial concepts into understandable frameworks. Above them, the dimensional rift pulsed with rhythmic energy, a constant reminder that the isolated peace their world had known had ended forever. Whatever came next would redefine not just Naruto's understanding of his own power, but the very place of their dimension within a multiverse of gods, destroyers, and cosmic hierarchies none of them had imagined existed. As silver energy began to flow through his chakra network under Marcarita's careful guidance, Naruto accepted the reality of their new situation with the adaptability that had defined his entire life. When faced with seemingly impossible challenges, the only path forward was through. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2 Divine Interventions. Silver threads of morning light slipped between the blinds, casting thin luminous bars across Naruto's sleeping form. He stirred, consciousness drifting upward through layers of exhaustion. His dreams had been strange, vast cosmic oceans, beings of pure light speaking in languages beyond comprehension, and throughout it all, the sensation of silver fire flowing through his veins. His eyes opened. The ceiling above him wasn't his own. Naruto bolted upright, instinctively gathering chakra, only to gasp as silver energy flared alongside the familiar golden warmth of his power. The resulting surge sent nearby objects floating momentarily before clattering back to surfaces. Fascinating reaction, came a melodic voice from the corner of the room. Your energy system automatically integrates divine ki with chakra when startled. Quite innovative. Marcarita sat perched on a simple wooden chair, staff balanced perfectly across her knees. She observed him with clinical interest, apparently unmoved by his surprise. Where am I? Naruto glanced around at the unfamiliar space, minimalist, pristine, with geometric patterns etched into walls that seemed composed of material somewhere between crystal and light. A temporary sanctuary constructed within a pocket dimension adjacent to your village, she explained, rising smoothly to her feet. Your training collapsed 3 training grounds yesterday. I deemed a more resilient environment necessary. Memories flooded back. 4 days of increasingly intense instruction in the fundamentals of divine ki manipulation. The last session had ended with Naruto unconscious after a attempting to separate his chakra completely from the silver energy now intertwined with it. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, noting with mild embarrassment that he wore only loose white pants. His torso was covered with intricate patterns, not tattoos or seals, but luminescent silver lines that traced his chakra network, occasionally shifting position like slow-moving lightning beneath his skin. These markings, he asked, examining his forearm where the patterns pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Divine ki adaptation. Marcarita approached, staff extending to hover inches from his chest. Your chakra network is restructuring itself to accommodate energies it was never designed to channel. The process appears to be accelerating. Her expression remained neutral, but something in her tone suggested fascination. For a being who had likely observed countless worlds over millennia, genuine interest seemed significant. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked, standing carefully. His body felt different, lighter somehow, as though gravity had lessened its hold on him. Neither, merely unprecedented. Marcarita traced her staff along one particularly bright line crossing his shoulder. In all recorded cosmic history, no mortal has survived direct contact with divine ki, let alone integrated it into their energy system. Naruto rolled his shoulders experimentally. So I'm a cosmic lab rat. The corner of Marcarita's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile he'd seen from her. An inelegant metaphor, but not entirely inaccurate. Your uniqueness presents valuable research opportunities. Glad to be of service, he replied dryly, searching for his shirt. How long was I unconscious? Approximately 17 hours. She gestured to a stack of neatly folded clothing. Your attire was damaged during yesterday's energy discharge. I've provided alternatives. The clothes weren't his usual style, a high-collared tunic in deep blue with silver geometric patterns along the edges, paired with fitted black pants of a material he didn't recognize. They looked suspiciously similar to the formal attire worn by celestial beings. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Trying to convert me to the divine dress code. Practical adaptation, she countered smoothly. The fabric is woven with particles that stabilize divine ki flow. It will prevent random energy discharges while your control develops. Practicality won over pride. Naruto dressed quickly, surprised by how perfectly the garments fit and the unusual lightweight comfort they provided. So what's on today's cosmic curriculum? He asked, following Marcarita as she moved toward the room's single door. More lectures on the fundamental differences between ki and chakra. Another attempt at separating Yin, RGIES that nearly blows up half the village. Actually, she replied, opening the door to reveal not a hallway but a vast open space that defied conventional physics, rolling crystalline plains extant. Ding to impossible horizons under a sky swirling with colors no human language had names for. Today we receive visitors. Naruto stepped through the doorway, momentarily disoriented by the transitio. From intimate room to endless landscape. Visitors. More celestial beings. Indeed. News of your awakening has spread through divine hierarchies. Marcarita gestured with her staff, creating a she-marrying visual display in the air between them. The Grand Priest has convened a special observation committee to evaluate your dimension's situation. The display showed what appeared to be a formal meeting chamber, elegant yet imposing. With towering columns and floating crystalline seats arranged in tiered semicircles. Beings of various appearances occupied these seats, all possessing the disti. NCT blue or purple skin tones and formal attire that seemed characteristic of celestial entities. The Council of 12, Marcarita explained. Representatives from each universe, assembled to address the unprecedented emergence of Ultra Instinct in a mortal vessel. Naruto studied the display with growing concern. They don't look particularly happy about it. Your observation is accurate. Any consider your awakening a potential threat to cosmic order. She dispersed the image with a casual wave. Others view it as a fascinating evolutionary development. The debate continues. And where do you stand? Marcarita paused, appearing to consider her response carefully. Something Naruto noted she rarely did, typically answering questions with immediate precision. I find myself in the unusual position of advocating for observation rather than intervention, she finally admitted. Your particular case presents variables without precedent in cosmic history. You mean you're curious, Naruto translated. A small smile forming. Millions of years watching universes, and something finally surprised you. Something flickered in her expression, so brief he might have imagined it. Curiosity is a mortal trait. Angels observe, analyze, and record. We do not experience subjective interest. Right, Naruto responded skeptically. So who's visiting, and why? Before she could answer, the impossible sky above them rippled. A perfect circle of distorted space formed, similar to the rift above Konoha but smaller and more precisely defined. Ah, right on schedule, Marcarita murmured, her posture straightening almost imperceptibly. 3 figures descended from the portal. The first, clearly another angel by her appearance and the staff she carried, resembled Marcarita in many ways. Though her hair was styled differently and her attire featured teal accents rather than purple. The other 2 beings contrasted dramatically. One tall, muscular and feline in appearance with purple skin and elaborate Egyptian-inspired clothing, the other smaller, thin, and anxious-looking with pointed ears and a uniform suggesting military function. Angel Marcarita, the female angel gray, ETED formally as they touched down on the crystalline surface. Universe 11 appears quite quaint. Angel Vados, Marcarita returned with equal formality. Universe 7, technically, though. This particular dimension exists in an isolated pocket with unique properties. She turned to Naruto. Hokage, may I present Angel Vados of Universe 6, along with Lord Champa, God of Destruction, and his attendant Kaba. Naruto bowed respectfully, having been briefed on the proper protocols when addressing cosmic entities. Welcome to, well, not exactly my world at the moment, but close enough. Champa, the feline deity, sniffed dismissively. So this is the mortal who's caused such a fuss. Doesn't look like much to me. Vados tapped her staff lightly against the ground, the sound ringing with subtle warning. Appearances can be deceiving, my lord. I sense considerable potential energy within him. Her gaze met Naruto's, analyzing him with such intensity he felt as though she were peering directly into his cellular structure. Unlike Marcarita's clinical observation, Vados's scrutiny carried an edge of skepticism. Potential, perhaps, she conceded after a moment. Though currently unrefined, raw, chaotic, she circled Naruto slowly, staff occasionally extending to measure invisible qualities around him. The divine key signature is unmistakable, however. He has indeed touched Ultra Instinct. Told you, Champa muttered to Kaba, who remained silent, studying Naruto with what appeared to be nervous admiration. The Grand Priest requires thorough evaluation before the council reconvenes, Vados explained. Completing her circle around Naruto. Universe 6 offers its expertise in energy analysis. Marcarita inclined her head slightly. Your assistance is appreciated, though I have already established comprehensive monitoring protocols. The subtle tension between the angels didn't escape Naruto's notice. Despite their formal cordiality, an undercurrent of professional rivalry hummed beneath the exchange. Perhaps a demonstration would prove informative, Vados suggested, turning to Naruto directly. Hokage, would you consent to display your current capabilities? Before Naruto could respond, the crystalline plane trembled. Far in the distance, fractures appeared in the fabric of this pocket dimension, spreading like cracks in ice. Interesting timing, Marcarita commented. Suddenly alert, the boundary integrity appears compromised. Vados frowned. This pocket dimension is your creation, Angel Marcarita. Such instabilities should be impossible without external interference. Indeed, both angels raised their staffs simultaneously, energy pulsing from the orbs atop them in rhythmic patterns. A foreign energy signature is attempting to penetrate the dimensional barrier. Champa yawned, apparently unperturbed by potential cosmic threats. Probably just Beerus sticking his whiskers where they don't belong again. Always poking around Universe 6 matters. No, Vados contradicted sharply, her usual composure slipping momentarily. This energy, it contains traces of divine ki, but corrupted. Distorted. The fractures spread rapidly, now visible as glowing lines racing across the ground toward them. Where they passed, the perfect crystalline surface darkened, as though the very substance of this reality was being poisoned. Prepare yourselves, Marcarita instructed, positioning herself protectively near Naruto. Whatever breaches the barrier may target the mortal specifically. Naruto slipped automatically into a defensive stance, drawing on years of battlefield instinct. Golden chakra flared around him, intermingled with flickering strands of silver divine energy he still couldn't fully control. Stay back, Kaba, Champa ordered, his casual demeanor vanishing as purple energy gathered around his corpulent form. If this turns messy, you're not equipped to handle divine combat. The young attendant nodded, moving to a safer distance while maintaining a watchful stance. The fractures converged at a point roughly 50 meters ahead of them, the dimensional fabric bulging outward as though something pushed against it from the other side. With a sound like shattering crystal multiplied 1,000-fold, reality tore open. From the jagged wound in space stepped a single figure, humanoid, with pale green SK. In white hair styled in an elaborate upward sweep. He wore formal attire in dark gray and maroon, similar to the angel's clothing yet distinct in subtle details. Most striking was his expression, old disdain mixed with fanatical purpose. Zamasu, Vados identified, voice hardening. Or rather, a variant of him. You should not exist in this timeline. The figure smiled thinly. Angel Vados, your grasp of temporal mechanics remains limited. I exist beyond such trivial constraints now. His gaze shifted to Naruto, eyes narrowing. So this is the mortal abomination who dares access divine power. How utterly presumptuous. Marcarita moved slightly, positioning herself between Zamasu and Naruto. Your presence here violates multiple cosmic laws, Zamasu. The Grand Priest eliminated you. Our timeline precisely because of such transgressions. The Grand Priest, like all who serve the established order, fails to comprehend true divine justice. Zamasu's hand rose, green energy gathering. Around it, not the pure light of the angel's power but something darker, corrupted. This mortal represents everything wrong with the cosmic hierarchy. Humans grasping at godhood, tainting divine essence with their limited, flawed understanding. Naruto assessed the newcomer quickly. Despite his relatively unimposing appearance, the being radiated malevolence and power beyond anything he'd sensed from others, different from the angel's controlled energy or even Champa's destructive potential. This felt wrong, fundamentally unbalanced. I don't know what your problem is, Naruto responded evenly, but I didn't ask for this power. It awakened when my people needed protection. Precisely. Zamasu's voice rose with zealous intensity. The divine answering mortal need, a perversion of the natural order. Gods exist above mortals, separate and supreme. Your very existence blurs that essential boundary. Champa stepped forward, ears flattened against his head in annoyance. Enough preaching. You're trespassing across universes, and I really hate paperwork about interdimensional incidents. Destructive energy gathered around the feline deity's hands, purple spheres of concentrated annihilation. Leave now, or be erased. Simple choice. Zamasu's smile widened. God of destruction Champa, ever the blunt instrument, your authority means nothing to one who has transcended conventional divine limitations. With frightening speed, he thrust his palm forward. Green energy erupted from it, not as a beam or blast but as a distortion in reality itself that rippled toward Champa like a wave of corrupted space. The god of destruction raised his hand to counter, but the attack moved with impossible velocity. Before it reached him, however, Vados intervened, her staff spinning in a PR. Isai's pattern that created a barrier of blue light. Zamasu's attack struck the barrier, and passed partially through it, the corrupted energy somehow bypassing defenses that should have been absolute. Champa roared in pain as the edge of the distortion caught his arm, the purple flesh seeming to dissolve where it made contact. Lord Champa. Kaba rushed forward despite orders, concern overriding protocol. Impossible, Vados whispered, genuine shock registering on her features. He penetrated an angel's defensive field. Marcarita's expression hardened. This Zamasu has evolved beyond his previous limitations. He's absorbed power from multiple sources. Perceptive, as always. Zamasu raised both hands now, corrupted energy flowing around him in patterns that distorted the very light of this dimension. I have claimed what the gods selfishly hoarded, the true potential of divine power, unrestrained by arbitrary limitations. Naruto recognized the escalating danger immediately. Whatever personal vendetta this being held against him specifically, the immediate threat extended to everyone present, including his mentors and, by extension, his entire dimension if this battle spilled beyond the pocket reality. Evacuate Lord Champa, Marcarita instructed Kaba tersely. The dimensional passage behind us remains stable. Angel Vados and I will contain the threat. You will try, Zamasu corrected, gathering more of the sickly green energy between his palms. But divine authority is meaningless against true divine justice. Before anyone could move, he released his attack, not toward the angels or Champa, but directly at Naruto. Time slowed for the Hokage. The corrupted energy approached with terrifying beauty, layers of distorted space rippling outward from a central void that seemed to consume light itself. In that stretched moment, Naruto perceived its complex structure, the underlying pattern of a divine technique twisted into something malevolent. His body respawned, dead before conscious thought, not with the pure ultra instinct he'd briefly accessed before, but with something hybrid, unique. Golden chakra flared around him, but instead of forming a defensive barrier as it normally would, it moved with liquid precision, silver threads of divine ki weaving through it in geometric patterns. Impossible, Zamasu hissed as Naruto's hands completed a sequence of movements he'd never consciously learned. The hybrid energy coalesced before him, forming not a shield but a precise counter pattern, golden chakra spirals interwoven with silver divine lattices. When Zamasu's attack struck this structure, the corrupted energy didn't impact or explode. Instead, it flowed through the pattern, its destructive properties somehow neutralized and dispersed. For a brief moment, perfect stillness held. Then Naruto gasped, dropping to one knee as feedback from the technique surged through his system. Not pain exactly, but overwhelming sensory input as his consciousness processed energy interactions beyond normal human perception. Fascinating, Vados murmured, momentarily distracted from Champa's injury. He instinctively created a harmonic dispersal field, a Tekken IQ even most gods of destruction cannot master. Zamasu's expression contorted with fury. You see, the abomination mimics divine techniques without understanding or reverence. This proves the core option spreading through the cosmic hierarchy. He gathered power for another attack, this one clearly stronger than the first. But before he could release it, Marcarita moved, not with mere speed but with something beyond conventional movement, her form seemingly present at multiple points simultaneously. Her staff struck precise points around Zamasu, creating a complex sealing pattern. Temporal stasis field, she announced, voice carrying unusual force. You will be contained and returned to the Grand Priest for judgment. Too late, Zamasu smiled even as the blue energy field closed around him. The seeds are already planted. This mortal's awakening has created fractures in dimensions beyond your perception. Others will come. The divine hierarchy will crumble as it should have millennia ago. His form began to dissolve. Not as though being destroyed but as if deliberately dispersing across multiple points in space-time. We shall meet again, mortal usurper. Your divine power cannot save you from divine justice. With those ominous words, Zamasu vanished completely, not captured by Marcarita's technique but somehow escaping through methods that left even the angels looking troubled. Silence fell across the crystalline plain, broken only by Champa's labored breathing as Vados tended to his injured arm. Well, the god of destruction muttered through clenched teeth, that was unpleasant. Remind me why we came to this backwater dimension again. Vados focused on healing his wound, which resisted her efforts more than should have been possible. To evaluate the mortal's ultra instinct manifestation, my lord, which, I believe, we just witnessed in a nascent form. All eyes turned to Naruto, who remained kneeling, silver gold energy still flickering around him as he struggled to stabilize the conflicting power systems within his body. Marcarita approached him, staff extended to scan his condition. Your energy networks are approaching critical imbalance. You need to release the excess power before it causes cellular damage. How? Naruto managed through gritted teeth. Inside, he could feel Kurama working frantically to contain the divine energy that threatened to overflow his chakra pathways. Kit, this power is too much. Your system can't process it all at once. The fox growled urgently. Channel it downward, Marcarita instructed, kneeling Bessid. Him in an unprecedented display of direct assistance. Threw your hands into the dimensional substrate. Naruto pressed his palms against the crystalline surface, focusing on directing the chaotic energy out of his system. The ground beneath him began to glow, patterns spreading outward from his hands. Concentric circles of golden chakra intertwined with silver divine script that wrote itself. In languages no human eye could comprehend. Slowly, the overwhelming pressure eased. The hybrid energy flowed from him into the dimensional fabric itself, which absorbed it without resistance. As the final excess power left his system, Naruto exhaled deeply, balance restored. That was, he began. Remarkable, Vados completed, having stabilized Champa's condition enough to approach. Instinctively harmonized two fundamentally different energy systems into a functional defensive technique. Without training, she exchanged a significant glance with Marcarita. The Grand Priest must be informed immediately. This development exceeds preliminary projections. Naruto stood carefully, surprised to find his strength returning rapidly. Unlike previous attempts at channeling divine ki, which had left him exhausted for days. This hybrid approach seemed more sustainable for his unique physiology. Who was that? He asked, looking between the angels. And what did he mean about others coming? Marcarita's expression grew solemn, an unusual display of emotion for the typically impassive angel. Zamasu was once a supreme Kai apprentice who developed radical views regarding mortals and divine power. In another timeline, he initiated a plan to eliminate all mortal life across the multiverse. That timeline was erased by Zeno himself, Vados added. The being we encountered appears to be a variant who somehow survived that erasure, and has since acquired power that should be theoretically impossible for him to possess. His energy signature contained traces of destruction ki, Marcarita observed. He has somehow assimilated power from a god of destruction. Champa growled, cradling his partially healed arm. Blasphemy. A Kai stealing destruction energy. The cosmic balance, as already compromised, Vados completed smoothly. The mortal's awakening, dimensional rifts appearing spontaneously, and now Zamasu's return with enhanced capabilities. These events cannot be coincidental. She turned to Naruto directly. Your demonstration was informative, though not in the manner anticipated. The council must be updated on these developments immediately. Wait, Naruto interrupted, strategist's mind working through implications. This Zamasu, he targeted me specifically. Said my existence threatens some divine order. What exactly does that mean for my people? For my dimension? The angels exchanged another glance, a silent communication that spoke volumes about their shared knowledge and concerns. Traditionally, Marcarita explained carefully, mortal diamonds. Ions accessing divine power without proper cosmic authorization would be reset. Reset, Naruto repeated flatly. You mean destroyed. Cleansed would be more accurate, Vados corrected with clinical precision. The dimensional fabric would be preserved while specific evolutionary developments deemed potentially destabilizing would be removed. Naruto's expression hardened. That's not happening. I don't care about cosmic hierarchies or divine protocols. My people have survived the 10 Tails, Kagaya, and more apocalyptic threats than I can count. I won't let them be cleansed, because S. own celestial bureaucracy thinks we've stepped out of our assigned cosmic box. Rather than offense at his defiance, Vados displayed what might have been the first hint of genuine respect. Your active instinct is precisely what makes your case unique, Hokage. Most mortals who glimpse divine power immediately seek to exploit it for personal gain or dominance. Your awakening occurred specifically to protect others. Marcarita added. This suggests an unusual alignment with divine principles rather than corruption of them. Champa, recovered enough to stand independently, snorted. Doesn't change the fundamental problem. Mortals aren't supposed to access ultra instinct. Period. The council won't make exceptions just because this one seems marginally less selfish than most. Then He'll have to provide compelling evidence that his case warrants special consideration, Marcarita responded, her tone suggesting this outcome mattered to her personally, another deviation from typical angel detachment. Vados studied Naruto with renewed interest. I propose an extension of the evaluation period. Return the mortal to his dimension while we report to the Grand Priest. His natural environment may provide additional insights into this unique evolution. Agreed, Marcarita nodded. The pocket dimension is compromised regardless. Zamasu's incursion has left energy traces that could allow further breaches. With a synchronized gesture, both angels raised their staffs. The crystalline landscape around them began to dissolve, reality shifting like watercolors bleeding together. Naruto felt momentary disorientation as the pocket dimension collapsed around them, depositing the group directly atop the Hokage Tower in Konoha. The abrupt transition drew immediate attention. Anbu guards appeared instantly, surrounding the group in defensive formation until recognizing their Hokage among the celestial visitors. Stand down, Naruto ordered, noting with concern that darkness had fallen. They'd spent nearly an entire day in the pocket dimension. Our guests are authorized. As the Anbu retreated to watchful distance, Shikamaru emerged from the tower entrance, expression shifting from alarm to resignation at the sight of more divine beings. Troublesome, he muttered, approaching Naruto. I'm guessing these aren't social calls. Lord Champa, God of Destruction for Universe 6, Naruto introduced formally. His attendant Kaba, and Angel Vados. They're here to evaluate our situation. Shikamaru bowed with precise diplomatic correctness, years of political experience overriding his natural inclination toward minimalism. Konoha welcomes distinguished representatives of the cosmic hierarchy. Champa yawned widely, clearly unimpressed by mortal formalities. Whatever. Got anything to eat around here? Interdimensional travel works up an appetite. Vados sighed softly. My lord, perhaps we should focus on the evaluation rather than local cuisine. I can evaluate food just fine, Champa retorted petulantly. Besides, you can do all the technical scanning or whatever while I get a feel for the local civilization. Food tells you everything about a culture's development level. Before this discussion could continue, a new voice joined the conversation, soft but confident, approaching from behind Shikamaru. Naruto-kun, you're back. We were getting worried when Hinata stopped abruptly as she registered the celestial visitors, her Byakugan activating automatically in response to their unusual energy signatures. The moment her dojutsu engaged, she gasped, hands rising to her temples as though in sudden pain. Hinata. Naruto moved to her side immediately, supporting her as she swayed. What's wrong? The veins around her eyes, Marcarita observed with sudden intense interest. They're absorbing divine ki particles from the surrounding area. Indeed, the characteristic veins of the Byakugan now pulsed with faint silver light, the lave ender eyes themselves developing a luminescent quality they'd never possessed before. I can see, Hinata whispered, gaze fixed on something beyond conventional perception. Everything, all at once, layers upon layers of reality, folding into each other. Vados approached swiftly, staff extending to scan the unexpected phenomenon. Fascinating. Her visual prowess appears naturally attuned to divine energy frequencies. The dojutsu is adapting to perceive multidimensional structures. Is she in danger? Naruto demanded, protective arms still supporting Hinata's shoulders. No immediate physical threat, Marcarita assured him, joining Vados in examining the developing situation. Though the sudden expansion of perceptual awareness may prove temporarily overwhelming. Hinata blinked rapidly, focus gradually returning as she adjusted to the transformed vision. Naruto-kun, your chakra network, it's completely changed. There are patterns flowing through you I've never seen before, connecting to somewhere else. She turned toward the dimensional rift that still hovered above the village, now stable but persistently present. And that portal, it's not just an opening. It's a junction point where multiple dimensional planes intersect. I can see at least 7 distinct realities overlapping there. Vados and Marcarita exchanged significant glances. Her visual prowess exceeds standard divine perception metrics, Vados noted with unmistakable surprise. Even angels typically perceive only 5-dimensional planes simultaneously. The Byakugan's evolutionary pathway must have developed along parallel lines to certain divine sensory capabilities, Marcarita theorized. When exposed to divine key particles, the latent potential activated immediately. Champa looked between the angels with growing impatience. So the mortal female has fancy eyes now. Can we please find food before getting into another technical discussion about evolutionary convergence or whatever? Lord Champa raises a valid point about basic hospitality, Shikamaru interjected smoothly, ever the tactful advisor. Perhaps we could continue this discussion over a meal. I believe Choji's family restaurant prepared several specialty dishes after hearing of our celestial visitors. The mention of food immediately captured Champa's full attention, his ears perking up visibly. Now that's proper diplomatic protocol. Lead the way, mortal advisor. As they made arrangements to relocate, Naruto remained beside Hinata, concern evident in his expression. Are you sure you're all right? This divine energy seems to affect everyone differently. Her Byakugan slowly deactivated, the silver glow fading from the veins around her eyes, though a subtle luminescence remained within the lavender irises themselves. I'm fine, Naruto-kun. It was just overwhelming at first. Like suddenly gaining a sense you never knew existed. She smiled reassuringly, touching his arm gently. Your energy feels different, but still fundamentally you. Warmer somehow, but with this fascinating complexity flowing through it. Their moment of connection was interrupted by Kaba, who approached somewhat hesitantly, the first time the young attendant had spoken directly to either of them. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, he began respectfully. I've been instructed to observe local military capabilities while Lord Champa conducts his culinary evaluation. Would it be possible to arrange a tour of your defensive systems? Naruto recognized the request for what it was, intelligence gathering disguised as casual interest. However, transparency might serve them better than secrecy at this point. Of course, he agreed. Shikamaru can assign an Anbu guide to show you our training facilities and defense parameters. Though I hope you'll understand certain strategic elements remain classified. Kaba nodded, appearing genuinely appreciative. Completely understandable, sir. Universe 6 operates under Milar protocols regarding planetary defense information. As arrangements were finalized and the group prepared to move toward the village center, Marcarita drew Naruto slightly aside, voice lowered for privacy. The Hyuga woman's dojutsu evolution presents an unexpected variable. Her visual perception may prove invaluable in monitoring dimensional stability as your training progresses. Naruto glanced toward Hinata, who was conversing quietly with Vados about her experience. Will it harm her? This divine energy exposure? Unlikely, Marcarita assessed. The adaptation appears natural, raw, ther than forced, as though her visual capabilities were always meant to perceive multidimensional structures but lacked the catalyzing element. She hesitated, then added something Naruto hadn't expected. You show considerable concern for her well-being. Of course, he replied without hesitation. Hinata is important to me. All my people are, yet her specifically, Marcarita observed with uncharacteristic perceptiveness. Interesting. Emotional attachments typically inhibit divine energy manipulation, yet in your case, they appear to function as stabilizing factors. Before Naruto Old respond to this unexpected insight into his personal feelings. A commotion erupted from the direction of the village center. Shouts and the sound of running feet carried to them, followed by a tremor that shook the Hokage tower itself. Now what? Champa complained, already moving toward the promised meal. Sasuke appeared in a blur of movement, landing beside Naruto with customary precision. Geological disturbance in the eastern district, he reported tersely. Not enemy action. Some kind of natural phenomenon, but with unusual energy signatures. The dimensional rift is affecting local spatial stability. Vados diagnosed immediately. Staff extended toward the eastern horizon where dust clouds were now visible. Gravitational fluctuations, possibly localized reality distortions. Naruto's decision was immediate. Sasuke, evacuation protocols for the eastern district. Shikamaru, alert the medical corps to prepare for casualties. He turned to Hinata. Can your Byakugan assess the exact nature of these distortions? She nodded, eyes already activating, the veins now pulsing with subtle silver light each time her dojutsu engaged. I'll try to locate structural weak points before they collapse. I'll accompany you, Vados offered unexpectedly. These phenomena may require divine intervention to stabilize properly. Champa sighed dramatically. Fine. Duty calls, or whatever. But I expect twice the food when this crisis is handled. Within moments, they were moving across rooftops toward the affected area, Naruto leading with Hinata and the celestial visitors following close behind. As they approached, the extent of the disturbance became clear, several city blocks where reality itself seemed to be malfunctioning. Buildings stretched and contracted in impossible ways, streets warped into Mobius strips. And in some areas, gravity operated in multiple contradictory directions simultaneously. Civilians caught in these anomalies floated helplessly or struggled against forces that pulled them in unnatural directions. Dimensional bleeding, Marcarita diagnosed, staff already working to analyze the phenomenon. The barrier between realities has thinned to the point where physical laws from multiple dimensions are overlapping. Can you stop it? Naruto asked, already creating shadow clones to assist stranded civilians. Temporarily, Vados replied, raising her staff in tandem with Marcarita's. But the fundamental issue remains the dimensional rift. These local disturbances will continue until the primary breach is sealed. As the angels began working to stabilize the affected area, Naruto spotted a particularly dangerous situation, an apartment building stretching impossibly tall, its structure groaning under forces it was never designed to withstand. Through windows warping like melting glass, he could see families trapped inside, including children clinging to furniture that had fused partially with walls. Hinata, can you see a safe path through that distortion field? He asked, already moving toward the building. Her Byakugan activated fully, the silver light now prominent within her lavender eyes. The dimensional overlay is thinner near the southwest corner. You could enter there, but the interior spatial geometry isn't following normal rules. Distances inside won't match what they should be. Naruto nodded, calculating risks and approaches. Golden chakra flared around him, but as he prepared to enter the distortion field, silver energy automatically surged alongside it, the divine key responding to his protective instincts. Kid, be careful, Kurama cautioned from within. These reality distortions could affect us in ways we can't predict. All the more reason to get those people out quickly. Naruto responded, Lao. Seeing himself toward the building's warping structure. As he passed through the dimensional distortion, reality shifted around him like moving through thick liquid. Inside, the apartment buildings. Interior had become a labyrinth of impossible geometry, hallways that looped back on themselves, stairs leading sideways rather than up, doors opening onto the same room from multiple directions simultaneously. Guided by Hinata's directions relayed through a shadow clone he'd left outside, Naruto navigated the spatial nightmare. The silver gold energy surrounding him seemed to stabilize reality in a small bubble around his body, allowing him to move through spaces that shouldn't exist without being affected by their distorted physics. He located the first family, a young couple with twin toddlers. Huddled in what had once been their kitchen but now existed partially in another dimension, everyday objects phasing in and out of reality around them. Hokage-sama, the father called in relief, clutching one child while the mother held the other. The room keeps changing. We can't find the way out. I've got you, Naruto assured them, creating a shadow clone for each family member. My clones will guide you. Stay within arm's reach at all times. The energy field around them will protect you from the worst effects. As the rescue proceeded, he moved deeper into the building, finding or residents trapped in increasingly distorted spaces. Some rooms had expanded to impossible sizes, others compressed until barely larger than closets despite containing full apartments. Time itself seemed to flow inconsistently, with water dripping from faucets hanging suspended in midair or racing through pipes at visible speed. Outside, the angels continued working to stabilize the affected area, their staffs emitting synchronized pulses of energy that temporarily forced reality back into conventional parameters. Hinata's evolved Byakugan proved invaluable, allowing her to direct rescue EAMS around the worst distortions and identify pockets where civilians remained trapped. When Naruto reached the building's core, or what would have been its core in normal space, he discovered the source of the localized anomaly. A small tear in reality pulsed in what had once been a utility closet, leaking energy that corrupted the surrounding dimensional fabric. This matches the energy signature from that Zamasu character, Kurama observed, like he left traps behind when he retreated. Naruto studied the tear carefully, noting how reality distorted more severely the closer he approached. This wasn't a natural consequence of the main dimensional rift but something deliberately created, malicious in design and purpose. His shadow clones had evacuated all civilians from the building, leaving him free to address the source directly. Drawing on the training Marcarita had begun, he attempted to sense the specific frequency of divine energy emanating from the tear. What he found disturbed him deeply. Unlike the pure divine ki of the angels or even the destructive energy of Champa, this power carried emotional imprints, hatred, zealotry, and absolute conviction of righteousness twisted into something fundamentally corrupt. Marcarita, he called through his remaining shadow clone outside. I've found something. A deliberate tear, not a natural distortion. The angel appeared beside him almost instantly, having used some method of teleportation he hadn't yet observed. Her expression hardened as she analyzed the pulsing tear. Zamasu's energy signature, she confirmed. He's attempting to destabilize your dimension systematically through these localized breaches. Can we seal it? I can, she replied, raising her staff. But the number of similar tears will likely increase exponentially. His strategy appears designed to stretch even divine intervention capabilities too thin to respond effectively. Naruto considered this strategist's mind working through implications and potential solutions. What if we try something different? Not sealing it from your side, but from mine. Marcarita paused, intrigued by the suggestion. Elaborate. You've been training me to control divine ki. But we've focused on separation, keeping it distinct from my chakra. What if that's the wrong approach? Naruto extended his hand toward the tear, golden chakra flowing around. His fingers with silver energy intertwined. What if the solution is integration instead? Highly experimental, Marcarita cautioned. The interaction between chakra and divine ki at such close proximity to a dimensional tear could produce unpredictable results. We're already facing unpredictable results, Naruto countered. Sometimes the best strategy is counterintuitive. After a moment's consideration, Marcarita inclined her head slightly. Proceed with caution. I will stabilize any dangerous feedback. Naruto focused on the hybrid energy flowing through him, not forcing separation as they'd practiced, but deliberately encouraging the golden chakra and silver divine ki to interweave more completely. The sensation was unlike anything he'd experienced before. Chakra typically felt warm, energizing, while divine ki carried a crystalline clarity that transcended physical sensation entirely. As the energies merged under his conscious guidance rather than stress-induced instinct, something new emerged, not gold, not silver, but a luminous platinum energy that hummed with harmonic resonance. He extended this harmonized energy toward the dimensional tear, not attacking it directly but encircling it, creating a stabilizing framework that matched the tear's frequency while inverting its pattern. I've never felt anything like this, Kurama murmured, the fox's chakra beginning to harmonize with the combined energy. It's like we're speaking directly to the fabric of reality. The tear responded to the approach, at first pulsing more violently as though resisting, then gradually synchronizing with the stabilizing frequency Naruto projected. Instead of sealing it forcefully as Marcarita might have done, he was essentially convincing the damaged reality to heal itself by providing the correct energetic template. Slowly, the tear began to close, not from external force but through a reharmonization of its own structure. The surrounding spatial distortions gradually normalized, the impossible geometry of the building resolving back toward conventional physics. Marcarita observed with undisguised fascination. Remarkable. You're not simply applying energy to the problem, you're communicating with the dimensional fabric itself, guiding rather than compelling. As the tear sealed completely, the harmonized platinum energy flowed back into Naruto's system, leaving him energized rather than depleted. Unlike previous attempts at manipulating divine ki, this integrated approach seemed naturally suited to his unique physiology. The building is stabilizing throughout all floors, Hinata reported through the Shadow Clone's connection. Whatever you did is working. Naruto turned to Marcarita, finding her studying him with new intensity. This approach, integration rather than separation, it feels right. Like it's how my system is naturally trying to process these energies. Contrary to all established cosmic theory, she noted, yet demonstrably effective. Your instinctive innovation may represent an entirely new paradigm for energy manipulation. They made their way outside, where the rescue operation had successfully evacuated all civilians from affected buildings. The angels had contained the broader dimensional distortions, while Konoha's ninja forces managed crowd control and medical response with practiced efficiency. Vados approached as they emerged, having completed her own stabilization work in adjacent areas. The localized breaches are contained temporarily, but I've identified 17 additional weak points throughout this dimensional plane. Zamasu's strategy appears designed to create cascading failures beyond conventional intervention capacity. Maybe not so beyond intervention, Marcarita replied, gesturing toward Naruto. The Hokage has demonstrated a novel approach to dimensional healing using harmonized energy integration rather than force-based sealing. Vados raised an elegant eyebrow, turning to Naruto with renewed interest. Elaborate. As Naruto explained his integrated energy approach, Hinata joined them, her Byakugan active but now under better control, the silver light within her eyes modulated rather than overwhelming. I can see the weak points Vados-sama mentioned, she confirmed. They're distributed in a specific pattern, not random at all, but forming a complex geometric structure across the village. She created a quick visual representation using a light chakra projection, a three-dimensional lattice showing 17 points arranged in what appeared to be a deliberate formation. A destabilization array, Vados identified immediately. Designed to collapse your entire dimensional plane inward once fully activated. Zamasu has become significantly more sophisticated in his methods. We need to address all weak points simultaneously, Marcarita determined. Even with both angels present, conventional sealing methods would require more time than we likely have before cascade failure initiates. Naruto studied the projection thoughtfully. What if we applied the same integration principle on a larger scale? Not just to individual tiers, but to the entire pattern. Theoretically sound but practically impossible, Vados countered. The energy requirements would exceed what any mortal could channel, even with your unique adaptations. Unless, Marcarita's gaze shifted between Naruto and Hinata. The Hyuga's evolved visual perception could potentially guide a network of energy conductors placed at strategic nodes throughout the array. Hinata nodded in understanding. I could coordinate positioning using the Byakugan while Naruto-kun provides the harmonized energy template. Still insufficient, Vados assessed. The energy would need simultaneous distribution across all 17 points with precise frequency matching. Shadow clones, Naruto suggested immediately. I can create and maintain thousands with independent chakra systems. If each clone channels the same harmonized energy pattern. The angels exchanged glances, apparently reassessing possibilities based on this capability they hadn't fully factored into their calculations. It could work, Marcarita acknowledged, though the strain of channeling harmonized divine chakra energy through multiple independent systems simultaneously would be considerable. I've handled worse, Naruto stated with simple confidence. And we don't have the luxury of alternatives. As they finalized the strategy, Champa approached with Kaba, having apparently grown bored with the technical discussions and subsequent waiting. Are we saving this dimension or not? The god of destruction demanded impatiently. I was promised an exceptional meal once this crisis was handled. We're implementing a harmonized energy integration protocol across a distributed node network, Vados explained smoothly. Champa's eyes glazed slightly. Right, that. Well, get on with it then. With Hinata's guidance, 17 shadow clones positioned themselves at precisely calculated points throughout Konoha, each stationed near one of the dimensional weak points Zamasu had created. The rest of the village had been temporarily evacuated from these areas, creating safe working spaces for the delicate operation. In the center of the formation, atop the Hokage Tower, Naruto prepared to coordinate the simultaneous energy distribution. Marcarita and Vados stood on either side of him, staffs raised to monitor the process and intervene if dangerous feedback occurred. Remember, Marcarita instructed, maintain the harmonic frequency we established. Allow the energies to integrate naturally rather than forcing specific patterns. Naruto nodded, closing his eyes to focus on the complex internal balance. Within him, Kurama had positioned himself at the nexus where chakra and divine ki intermingled, the ancient fox's presence helping stabilize the interaction between fundamentally different energy systems. Ready when you are, Kit, Kurama confirmed. This is uncharted territory, but when has that ever stopped us? With a deep breath, Naruto began. Golden chakra surged outward, followed immediately by silver divine ki, but instead of projecting them separately, he encouraged their natural harmonic resonance. The resulting platinum energy expanded in concentric waves, connecting to each shadow clone through their shared consciousness. Through this network, he could perceive all 17 dimensional weak points simultaneously, each with slightly different frequencies. All corrupted with Zamasu's malevolent energy signature. Rather than opposing this corruption directly, he directed his harmonized energy to encircle each distortion, creating stabilizing frameworks that invited natural reharmonization. The process demanded unprecedented concentration, maintaining 17 distinct energy patterns while ensuring the overarching harmonic structure remained intact. Sweat beaded on his forehead as his consciousness expanded to hold the entire complex operation. Balance shifting in the northeastern node, Kurama warned. Frequency destabilizing. Naruto adjusted immediately, sending a pulse of recalibrated energy to the affected clone. Throughout the village, the dimensionally distorted areas began to shimmer as reality gradually realigned with its natural parameters. It's working, Hinata confirmed, her evolved Byakugan monitoring the entire process. The tiers are responding to the harmonic pattern. They're beginning to self-seal. The angels observed with professional assessment, occasionally making minute adjustments to the ambient dimensional pressure around specific nodes when fluctuations threatened the overall stability. Remarkable efficiency, Vados noted. Genuine respect evident in her tone. The harmonized energy is achieving in minutes what conventional divine sealing would require hours to accomplish. As the process neared completion, resistance suddenly increased, the dimensional tiers pulsing with renewed corruption as though actively fighting the harmonization. Zamasu is attempting to reassert control remotely, Marcarita identified. Staff flaring with increased power. He's channeling additional corrupt energy into the array. The sudden opposition sent feedback surging through Naruto's network, several Shadow W clones destabilizing under the pressure. Pain lanced through his system as the carefully balanced energies threatened to collapse into chaos. Don't fight it directly, Marcarita advised urgently. Adapt to the new frequency. Incorporate rather than oppose. Drawing on years of battlefield adaptability, Naruto adjusted his approach, not resisting the corrupt energy but acknowledging its presence. Then offering an alternative harmonic that encompassed rather than rejected it. Like redirecting a powerful river rather than building a dam against it, he guided the malevolent force into new patterns that neutralized its destructive potential. The resistance peaked, then gradually subsided as the harmonization process overwhelmed Zamasu's remote influence. One by one, the dimensional tiers sealed completely. Reality knitting itself back together with increasing momentum as each closure strengthened the overall dimensional fabric. With the final seal complete, Naruto released the energy network, his shadow clones dispersing in synchronized puffs of smoke. The accumulated experience and energy expenditure rushed back to him in a wave that would have overwhelmed most ninja, but his expanded consciousness processed it smoothly, integrating the diverse perspectives and sensations. Dimensional stability restored to 97.8% of baseline parameters, Vados announced, staff completing its analytical scan. Residual distortion within acceptable limits for natural reharmonization. Naruto opened his eyes, finding both angels regarding him with what could only be described as scientific fascination. Your adaptive problem-solving methodology is unconventional, Marcarita observed. Rather than imposing order through superior force, you essentially persuaded reality to heal itself. Fighting force with force usually just creates more damage, Naruto replied, the philosophy that had guided him throughout his life applying even to cosmic-level threats. Finding harmony works better, even if it's harder. Champa yawned dramatically, apparently unimpressed by the successful dimensional stabilization. Yes, mortal wisdom, very profound. Now, about that promised meal. Vados sighed softly. My lord, perhaps we should first complete our evaluation report for the Grand Priest. The mortal has demonstrated significant capabilities relevant to the Council's deliberations. Fine, Champa conceded reluctantly. Quick report, then food. That's my final offer. As the group made their way back toward the village center, Hinata fell into step beside Naruto, her Byakugan, and deactivated but the faint silver luminescence remaining in her eyes. That was incredible, she said softly. The way you harmonized those energies instead of forcing them. I could see the dimensional fabric responding. Like it recognized something familiar in your approach. Naruto smiled, fatigue evident but spirits high after the successful intervention. Honestly, it felt natural. Like is how my system wants to handle these energies all along. Your chakra has always been special, she observed. Even before all this, maybe that's why the divine energy responds differently to you than it would to others. Her insight struck Naruto as potentially significant, something worth discussing with Marcarita when they continued his training. Before he could respond, however, a messenger appeared before them. Bowing quickly, Hokage-sama, urgent communication from the Sand Village. They're experiencing similar dimensional disturbances across their territory. Kage Gaara requests immediate consultation. Naruto's expression grew serious. It's spreading beyond Konoha. Zamasu's strategy may be targeting the entire shinobi world, not just our village. He turned to the celestial visitors. This changes our priorities. If these dimensional attacks are expanding globally, we need to develop a more comprehensive response strategy. Vados nodded in agreement. This Devila meant warrants immediate communication with the Grand Priest. Interdimensional destabilization on a planetary scale represents a significant escalation. I will remain to continue your training, Marcarita decided. Angel Vados can report our findings to the Council and request additional resources if necessary. Champa groaned dramatically. So much for my cultural culinary evaluation. Fine, Vados, make it quick. I expect a full banquet when you return. As arrangements were made for Vados's departure and communication with other shinobi nations, Naruto found himself at another turning point. What had begun as a personal transformation was rapidly expanding into a global crisis with cosmic implications. We'll need to convene the 5 Kage immediately, he told Shikamaru, who had joy. Ned them upon their return to the administrative center. Coordinate response teams for affected areas and establish monitoring protocols for early detection of new dimensional disturbances. Shikamaru nodded, already mentally organizing logistics. I'll arrange secure communication channels and emergency response guidelines for distribution to all allied nations. As the day's events transitioned into strategic planning sessions, Naruto caught Marcarita observing him with that same fascination, clinical yet increasingly tinged with something almost like respect. You're adapting to cosmic-scale threats with remarkable efficiency, she noted when their eyes met. Most civilizations require centuries of exposure to develop appropriate response frameworks. We've had practice thinking on our feet, Naruto replied with a slight smile. When you've faced the end of the world a few times, you develop protocols. For the first time since her arrival, Marcarita's expression shifted into something almost like a genuine smile, brief but unmistakable. Perhaps that's precisely why the divine energy responded to you specifically, she suggested. Adaptability, innovation, harmony through understanding rather than dominance. These qualities align surprisingly well with the fundamental principles of Ultra Instinct itself. The observation lingered in Naruto's mind as they moved forward with crisis management. Perhaps his awakening wasn't the cosmic aberration the divine hierarchy considered it, but something more natural, an evolution that bridged different forms of energy through understanding rather than separation. As night fell over a Konoha now stable but forever changed by the day's events, Naruto stood atop the Hokage monument, gazing at the dimensional rift that still shimmered above the village. The silver-gold energy flowed through his system with growing harmony, no longer fighting for dominance but finding natural balance. Whatever came next, divine counsels, cosmic threats, or further evolution of powers beyond mortal understanding, he would face it as he always had, by finding harmony where others saw only conflict, and by protecting those who depended on him, regardless of what universal laws he might need to redefine in the process. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Echoes of Crimson. Dawn painted Konoha in delicate amber hues as Naruto stood before the memorial stone, fingertips tracing names etched in cold granite. 3 weeks had passed since the dimensional stabilization event, 3 weeks of intensive training, diplomatic firefighting, and the growing awareness that their world now existed within a vastly more complex cosmos than they'd ever imagined. "You're up early," came Kakashi's voice as the former Hokage materialized beside him, trademark orange book absent for once. "Can't sleep. Dreams," Naruto admitted, hand falling away from the stone. "Strange ones. Voices speaking in languages I've never heard but somehow understand. Vast spaces between stars. Beings made of pure light." Kakashi studied him with that penetrating single-eyed gaze that had always seen more than it revealed. "Side effects of your transformation. Marcarita says it's my consciousness expanding beyond conventional perception limitations." Naruto smiled slightly. "I think that's divine speak for weird dreams are normal when you're channeling God energy." Thin mist curled around their ankles as birdsong gradually replaced nocturnal silence. The village was waking. Another day of rebuilding, adapting, moving forward despite the shimmering portal hat still hung above them like a cosmic question mark. "The 5-cage summit begins today," Kakashi reminded him unnecessarily. "Gaara arrived last night. The others should be here by noon." "I know." Naruto's expression grew more serious. Hard to prepare talking points when interdimensional stability wasn't covered in Hokage training. "You'll do fine." Kakashi's eye crinkled in that familiar smile. "You've always had a gift for making the impossible sound reasonable." Their conversation halted as both sensed a subtle shift in atmospheric pressure. Above them, the dimensional rift pulsed with sudden intensity, its edges fluctuating in patterns unlike its usual stable rhythm. Silver-gold energy automatically flowed through Naruto's system in response, a defensive reaction now becoming instinctual. "Alert the Anbu," he instructed, already moving toward the anomaly. "Full defensive posture, but no offensive action without my direct order. We don't need another cosmic incident before breakfast." Kakashi vanished without another word, the perfect soldier even years into nominal retirement. Naruto launched himself toward the Hokage Tower, the most direct path to the rift's position. As he crossed rooftops with chakra-enhanced speed, he activated the communication seal Shikamaru had developed specifically for dimensional emergencies. "Fluctuation at the primary rift," he reported concisely. "Pattern unprecedented. Potential incursion. Acknowledged," came Shikamaru's immediate response, voice carrying that particular tone of someone who'd been awakened abruptly but was already fully alert. "Marcarita is being notified. Defensive perimeter activating." By the time Naruto reached the observation platform constructed beneath the rift, a dozen Anbu had already taken position, joined moments later by Sasuke and Sakura arriving from opposite directions. "What are we dealing with?" Sasuke asked without preamble, Rinnegan activated and scanning the disturbance. "Unknown," Naruto replied, his own senses extended toward the rift. The integration training with Marcarita had enhanced his perception significantly. He could now detect subtle variations in dimensional energy that would have been completely invisible to him weeks ago. "This isn't like Zamasu's corruption," he observed, silver-gold energy flowing visibly around his hands as he analyzed the fluctuations. "The frequency is different, almost familiar somehow." Marcarita appeared in that distinctive instantaneous movement angels employed, staff already raised toward the anomaly. "Correct. This disturbance originates from a parallel timeline rather than an alternate universe." The dimensional signature shares baseline frequencies with your native reality. Meaning, Sakura prompted, Chakra Ga. There it in preparation for either combat or emergency medical response. Meaning whatever is attempting to cross over shares fundamental properties with your dimension, Marcarita explained. Not an outside invader, but a variant of something that already exists here. The rift's pulsations intensified, colors shifting through spectrums beyond normal human perception, though Naruto could now see them clearly. Another unexpected development from his evolving abilities. It's trying to stabilize, he realized, perceiving patterns in the seemingly chaotic energy fluctuations. Not forcing its way through, but seeking resonance. Without conscious decision, his hands moved in sequences he'd never been taught, silver-gold energy extending toward the rift in precisely modulated waves. Rather than opposing the dimensional disturbance, he found himself automatically harmonizing with it, providing stability where instability threatened. Fascinating adaptation, Marcarita commented, observing his instinctual response. You're facilitating controlled transfer rather than preventing breaching. Is that dangerous? Sasuke asked sharply, hand moving to his sword. Unknown, Marcarita admitted, though the absence of malevolent energy signatures suggests this may not represent a direct threat. The rift suddenly expanded, perfect circumference doubling in diameter as reality folded inward at its center. Light bent in impossible angles, creating prismatic patterns across the village as dawn sunlight refracted through dimensional boundaries. From within this kaleidoscopic display, a humanoid silhouette gradually took form, indistinct at first, then solidifying as it passed through the final dimensional barrier. The figure dropped to the platform with unexpected grace, landing in a defensive crouch that spoke of highly trained combat reflexes. Long crimson hair spilled around a face that caused Naruto's breath to catch in his throat. The woman straightened slowly, violet eyes shifting rapidly between the assembled shinobi as she assessed potential threats with expert precision. She wore battle-worn armor reminiscent of Anbu design but with subtle variations, sleeker, more advanced in certain aspects. Bearing unfamiliar insignia, most striking was her face. Identical to photographs Naruto had treasured his entire life, yet belonging to someone perhaps only a few years older than himself. Kushina Uzumaki, Marcarita identified calmly, though something in her tone suggested even the angel found this development unexpected. The redhead's gaze locked onto Naruto, recognition and confusion battling across features so achingly familiar yet subtly different. Minato, she whispered, taking an uncertain step forward before halting, head tilting slightly as she registered the whisker marks on his cheeks. No. Not Minato. Her eyes narrowed, hands shifting to access weapons concealed within her armor. Where am I? Which timeline is this? Naruto found himself temporarily speechless, a rare occurrence for the typically verbose Hokage. The woman before him was undeniably Kushina Uzumaki, his mother, yet clearly from a reality where her life had taken a dramatically different path. Marcarita intervened smoothly. You have crossed a dimensional boundary into a parallel timeline. This is Konohagakure of Dimension 7C419, a variant of your native reality. Kushina absorbed this information with surprising equanimity, suggesting experience with concepts most shinobi would find incomprehensible. Her combat stance relaxed marginally, though vigilance remained evident in her posture. Dimensional shifting wasn't intentional, she stated, gaze returning to Naruto with penetrating intensity. Last memory. Pursuing Kagaya's faction through a space Ime corridor when their technique destabilized. Then, nothingness. Then here. Her clipped speech pattern suggested someone accustomed to battlefield reporting rather than casual conversation. Despite the circumstances, Naruto couldn't help noting how her mannerisms echoed what little he knew of his mother's personality. Direct, intense, precisely controlled energy barely contained beneath the surface. You're safe here, he finally managed, finding his voice. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, 7th Hokage of Konoha. Her eyes widened fractionally. Uzumaki. Her gaze flickered to his blonde hair, then back to his face. Clearly cataloging similarities and differences against some internal reference. Relation to Minato Namikaze, his son, Naruto confirmed softly. And yours, in this timeline. Absolute stillness claimed her for precisely 3 seconds, not a muscle twitched, not a breath taken. Then she exhaled slowly, composure reasserting itself with visible effort. That's complicated, she finally responded, understating the situation so dramatically that Naruto found himself fighting an inappropriate urge to laugh. Marcarita's staff pulsed gently, scanning the newcomer with divine precision. Fascinating. Your cellular structure carries temporal displacement markers consistent with trans-dimensional travel, yet your fundamental energy signature matches this dimension's baseline frequency. Kushina eyed the angel warily. You're not human. Chakra signature unlike anything I've encountered. Indeed, I am Marcarita, angel attendant to Belmod, god of destruction for Universe 11. She gestured toward the dimensional rift still pulsing above them. Your appearance coincides with significant cosmic developments affecting this dimension. Sasuke stepped forward, ever practical. The rift is still unstable. We should continue this conversation somewhere more secure. Agreed, Naruto nodded, though his gaze hadn't left Kushina's face. 1,000 questions crowded his mind. But years of leadership had taught him priorities. Security protocols first, personal matters second. Something like approval flickered in Kushina's expression, recognition of leadership priorities that matched her own training. She inclined her head in acknowledgement, then glanced toward the village spread below them. Konoha, she murmured, similar architecture but significant variations from my timeline. Development path diverged approximately 30 years ago. That assessment aligns with preliminary dimensional analysis, Marcarita confirmed. Your native timeline Lickle, why branched from this one during the Third Shinobi World War era? Naruto gestured toward the Hokage Tower. We have secure facilities where we can debrief properly. Sakura, would you inform Shikamaru and assemble the response team? Sasuke, maintain surveillance on the rift for additional anomalies. Both nodded, moving to their assigned tasks with efficient precision born from years of teamwork. As they departed, Kushina studied Naruto with undisguised scrutiny. You have his leadership style, she observed. Minato's. But there's something else in your chakra signature. Something beyond normal parameters. It's a recent development, Naruto acknowledged, leading the way toward the tower entrance. And part of why your arrival is particularly interesting timing. As they navigated the building's interior toward the secure conference room established specifically for dimensional incidents, Naruto found himself hyper-aware of the woman following just 2 steps behind him. Her movements carried lethal grace, not a gesture wasted, every step perfectly balanced for immediate combat response if necessary. Not the mother he'd briefly encountered through chakra echoes and reanimation techniques. Not the vibrant, loving woman whose absence had shaped his early life. This Kushina was a hardened warrior, roughly his own age, with eyes that had seen battlefields and made the hard decisions required for survival. Within the conference room, walls reinforced with privacy seals and chakra-dampening techniques, they were joined by Shikamaru, whose analytical gaze assessed Kushina with professional detachment despite the extraordinary circumstances. Dimensional variant of Kushina Uzumaki, Marcarita explained for his benefit. Temporal displacement suggests origin in a parallel timeline where historical events diverged significantly from this dimension's established chronology. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered in his characteristic fashion, though his sharp eyes missed nothing as he studied their visitor. Chronological age appears approximately 25 to 27, suggesting birth date consistent with our timeline but vastly different life experiences thereafter. Kushina raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed despite herself. Accurate assessment. 26 standardized solar cycles since birth. Nara clan analytical abilities apparently consistent across dimensions. She turned to Naruto directly. Before we proceed further, in my timeline, Minato Namikaze died during the Third Shinobi War. I never had a child. Her gaze sharpened. Yet you exist here as our son. This creates complex emotional variables. The directness of her approach, addressing the elephant in the room without prevarication, was so characteristic of what little Naruto knew of his mother that he found himself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. In this timeline, you both died the night I was born, he explained gently. Protecting me and the village from the Nine Tails. I grew up without knowing either of you until much later, through various, complicated means. Something flickered across her expression, not quite pain, but a shadow of it. I see. Different paths, different outcomes. Dimensional constants often manifest in warped reflections. You seem remarkably well versed in dimensional theory for a shinobi, Marcarita observed, curious despite her typically detached demeanor. Kushina's expression hardened slightly. Necessity. My timeline's Kagaya succeeded in implementing the infinite Tsukuyomi. Those of us who escaped have spent years developing countermeasures, including dimension-shifting techniques to locate variants of our world untouched by her influence. This revelation landed heavily in the room. Naruto exchanged glances with Shikamaru, both recognizing the implications immediately. Your dimension is under Kagaya's control, Naruto asked, strategist's mind already cataloging potential threats and contingencies. Kushina corrected grimly. 3 years ago, she began expanding beyond our dimension into adjacent realities. We've been fighting a multi-dimensional war since then, attempting to contain the Spria D while searching for weaknesses in her dimensional manipulation techniques. Marcarita's interest visibly intensified. This explains the unusual adaptive properties in your cellular structure. XD. NDED exposure to interdimensional energies has fundamentally altered your physiological baseline. Side effect of repeated dimensional transit, Kushina confirmed with a casual shrug that belied the extraordinary nature of such adaptation. My team specialized in cross-dimensional operations. We can survive transition effects that would kill most shinobi. Your team, Shikamaru prompted, ever alert for security implications. Resistance cell, specialized strike force. Her expression closed slightly. Most didn't survive our last mission. Status of remaining operatives unknown following dimensional corridor collapse. The clinical way she reported what must have been devastating personal losses spoke volumes about the world she came from, one where grief had become luxury few could afford amid constant existential threat. Naruto found himself studying her with growing fascination and respect. This wasn't the mother he had briefly known, this was a battle-hardened warrior forged in a reality where different choices, different circumstances had created someone both familiar and utterly unique. Your dimensional transition appears stable for now, Marcarita informed her, staff completing another analytical scan. Though your energy signature contains anomalies that warrant closer observation. Meaning I'm stuck here, Kushina translated bluntly. Temporarily, at minimum, Marcarita confirmed. The dimensional rift above this village represents an unprecedented cosmic phenomenon. Its precise properties remain partially unknown despite extensive analysis. Kushina absorbed this with pragmatic acceptance. Understood. Request permission to remain in Konoha while situation clarifies. Will offer tactical intelligence on dimensional warfare in exchange for sanctuary. The formal request, delivered with military precision, struck Naruto as simultaneously appropriate and absurdly unnecessary. This was his mother, or a version of her, requesting formal permission to stay in a village that, in another reality, she had helped build and died protecting. Permission granted, he responded, maintaining the official tone she had established while adding with a softer voice, you're always welcome here. Regardless of which dimension you come from. Something in her expression shifted, the barest softening around eyes that had clearly witnessed too much hardship. Appreciated, she said simply. Though the single word carried more genuine emotion than her previous formal statements combined. Shikamaru, ever practical, rose from his seat. I'll arrange secure court, and appropriate clearance documentation. The 5-cage summit begins in 4 hours, they should be informed of this development immediately. Agreed, Naruto nodded. Though let's keep detailed information compartmentalized for now. Dimensional visitor with strategic intelligence, provides sufficient explanation without unnecessary complications. After Shikamaru departed, an awkward silence descended upon the room. Marcarita observed the interaction between dimensional variants of mother and son with undisguised scientific fascination, while neither Naruto nor Kushina seemed certain how to navigate the extraordinary circumstances. Finally, Kushina broke the stalemate with characteristic directness. This is strange for both of us. You grew up without me. I never had you. We share genetic material and name. But our connections and experiences are fundamentally different. She leaned forward slightly, violet eyes meeting his with unflinching honesty. I propose we acknowledge he biological relationship but interact as independent individuals without imposing emotional expectations based on roles neither of us actually experienced with each other. The pragmatic approach, so rational, so sensible. and so utterly at odds with the emotional complexity churning beneath Naruto's carefully maintained Hokage composure, nearly made him laugh despite himself. "That's very logical," he managed, finding an unexpected smile. "Though I should warn you, logic isn't always my strong suit. Ask anyone who knew me as a kid." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, the first genuine expression of warmth she'd displayed since arriving. Some things transcend dimensional boundaries. Uzumaki impulsiveness appears universally consistent. The moment of connection, brief but genuine, eased some of the tension in the room. Marcarita observed this exchange with particular interest, her staff subtly measuring energy fluctuations between the dimensional counterparts. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Your energy signatures are harmonizing spontaneously despite dimensional variance. Genetic resonance appears to transcend temporal divergence." Both Uzumakis turned toward her with identical expressions of mild exasperation at having a personal moment reduced to clinical observation, a similarity neither missed, resulting in shared looks of surprised recognition. "Sorry," Naruto offered, rubbing the back of his neck in a characteristic gesture. "Marcarita sees everything through the lens of cosmic energy patterns. You get used to it, eventually. Your divine energy integration progresses impressively." Marcarita countered, unperturbed by the critique. Emotional resonance appears to stabilize the harmonic frequency between chakra and divine ki. Kushina's attention sharpened at this exchange. "Divine energy. You're channeling something beyond normal chakra parameters." It wasn't a question but an observation, her trained senses apparently detecting the silver trace that now permanently intermingled with his traditional golden chakra. "It's complicated," Naruto acknowledged, "and related to that dimensional rift that brought you here. The short version, RD, mention recently connected to a larger multiverse structure, and in the process, I somehow accessed energy typically reserved for divine beings. Ultra instinct," Marcarita elaborated. "A state of ideal perfection even most gods cannot achieve. His awakening represents an unprecedented evolutionary development with significant cosmic implications." "Always the overachiever," Kushina commented, with dry humor that momentarily transformed her features into something lighter, younger, a glimpse of who she might have been without years of interdimensional warfare. Minato would have been proudly confused. The casual reference to his father, delivered with such natural familiarity, sent an unexpected pang through Naruto. This woman had known a version of Minato Namikaze intimately, had loved him, fought alongside him, lost him, in ways that connected directly to the parents he had never truly known. Before he could formulate a response, alarms sounded throughout the tower, the specific T-retone sequence indicating dimensional disturbance. Naruto was on his feet instantly, silver gold energy automatically flowing through his system in response to potential threat. "Location," he demanded into his communication seal. "Eastern District," came Sasuke's terse reply. "Pattern matches Zamasu's corruption signature. Multiple breaches forming simultaneously." "On my way," Naruto confirmed, turning to Kushina with apologetic haste. "Duty calls. Stay here where it's secure until." He stopped mid-sentence as Kushina had already risen, combat readiness evident in every line of her body. "Dimensional incursion response is my specialization," she stated flatly. "I'm coming." Something in her tone, not a request or even an argument, but a simple statement of operational fact, reminded Naruto so forcefully of his mother's reputation as Konoha's red-hot-blooded habanero that argument seemed pointless. "Stay within visual range," he instructed instead, leadership instincts overriding personal considerations. "Our dimensional threats have unique properties you haven't encountered before." Acknowledged. The single word carried professional acceptance of command hierarchy, clearly. This Kushina had extensive experience within military structures. Marcarita rose gracefully, staff already pulsing with anticipatory energy. "The dimensional visitor's unique adaptive properties may prove valuable against Zamasu's corruption techniques. Her physiological structure demonstrates remarkable stability across interdimensional transit." Without further discussion, they moved with coordinated precision toward the tower's exit and the emerging threat beyond. As they crossed rooftops toward the Eastern District, Naruto found himself constantly aware of Kushina moving just slightly behind his right shoulder, a position that spoke of trained battlefield formation rather than coincidence. The Eastern District came into view, immediately revealing the extent of the dimensional breaches. Unlike previous incidents, these distortions manifested as vertical tears in reality, jagged wounds in the very fabric of space, each pulsing with the sickly green energy that characterized Zamasu's corruption. Most concerning was the pattern of their arrangement, not random manifestations but precisely positioned tears forming a complex geometric array across the district. At the center of this formation stood three figures, none recognizable from previous encounters. These newcomers shared certain visual characteristics: pale skin with faint greenish undertones, white hair styled in variations of Zamasu's distinctive appearance, and formal attire reminiscent of Kai garments but corrupted with elements that seemed fundamentally wrong, as though reality itself rejected their presence. Disciples. Marcarita identified immediately, staff raised defensively. Zamasu has created subordinates, infusing mortal vessels with fragments of his corrupted divine essence. Kushina assessed the situation with veteran precision. Tactical formation indicates ritual preparation rather than direct assault. Central figures anchoring dimensional array while boundary tiers weaken local reality cohesion. Naruto was impressed despite the circumstances. Her analysis matched his own conclusions exactly, delivered with concise battlefield efficiency. Before they could develop a counter-strategy, one of the central figures turned toward them, smiling with the serene malevolence that seemed characteristic of Zamasu's followers. "The abomination arrives," the figure announced, voice carry ing harmonic undertones that distorted natural acoustics. "Right on schedule, as the prophet foresaw." "Prophet?" Naruto questioned, silver gold energy gathering around him in preparation for engagement. "The exalted Zamasu sees across all timelines, all possibilities," another disciple responded with religious fervor. "Your corruption of divine power has been anticipated since before your birth, mortal usurper." Kushina shifted subtly into an offensive stance, chakra gathering visibly around her hands, standard Uzumaki energy but with unusual density and control that spoke of mastery beyond typical Jonin capabilities. "Dimensional anchor points," she observed quietly to Naruto. "They're using the tiers to establish a larger connection matrix, similar to techniques my dimension develope. To counter Keigaya's reality manipulation." Marcarita confirmed this assessment with a brief nod. Their arrangement follows cosmic geometry principles designed to weaken interdimensional barriers permanently. If completed, this ritual would create uncontrolled convergence between multiple realities. "Can't let that happen," Naruto stated grimly, already forming the hand sign for his shadow clone technique. "Standard containment approach, ineffective against this configuration," Marcarita cautioned. "Direct energy application would accelerate the convergence process. We must disrupt the anchoring sequence without engaging the dimensional tiers directly." Kushina's eyes narrowed in concentration as she studied the complex arrangement. "Target the practitioners, not the tiers. In my dimension, similar rituals required constant chakra application from the anchoring vessels. Neutralize them, and the tier structure collapses naturally." "The dimensional variant speaks truth," Marcarita confirmed, clearly impressed by Kushina's technical understanding. Though these disciples possess corrupted divine energy rather than conventional chakra, the principle remains sound. Without further discussion, Naruto launched into action, not with his typical frontal assault approach, but with the strategic precision his years as Hokage had developed. Multiple shadow clones materialized around the perimeter, each tasked with specific objectives rather than overwhelming force. Kushina moved with startling speed, her fighting style immediately recognizable as a variant of Konoha's Anbu. Techniques but with modifications Naruto had never witnessed. More fluid, more lethal, with an economy of movement that suggested years of refinement under life or death pressure. The disciples responded immediately, abandoned their ritual positions to engage the threats. Green-tinged energy flared around them, similar to Zamasu's power but distinctly lesser in magnitude, dangerous but not insurmountable. "The prophet warned of your interference," the lead disciple called out, hands forming unfamiliar seals that warped the air around them. "Your presence is calculated into the great convergence. Talk less, fight more." Kushina responded dryly, her hands blurring through seals Naruto recognized as advanced Uzumaki techniques, some he'd learned from scrolls, others entirely unfamiliar. Hanes of pure chakra erupted from her back, reminiscent of her famous technique but evolved beyond the version Naruto had witnessed in historical records. These chains moved with almost sentient precision, targeting the disciples' chakra networks with surgical accuracy while simultaneously disrupting the dimensional connections between tiers. Marcarita observed this technique with undisguised fascination. Remarkable. Her chakra constructs naturally counter interdimensional frequency distortion. The Uzumaki lineage appears specifically adapted for manipulating spatial temporal boundaries. Naruto, engaging the lead disciple directly, found himself unconsciously mirroring elements of Kushina's fighting style, not through deliberate choice but through some genetic resonance that transcended their separate developments. The silver-gold energy flowing through his system synchronized naturally with the rhythm of her attacks, creating unexpected harmonics that destabilized the disciples' corrupted divine energy. "The convergence cannot be stopped," shouted one disciple, green energy coalescing around their form in increasingly desperate patterns. "The prophet has seen the collapsing of walls between worlds. Your prophet needs better vision," Naruto countered, silver-gold energy forming a Rasengan unlike any he'd previously created, not simply rotational chakra but a complex lodi CE of integrated energies that hummed with harmonic resonance between divine ki and natural chakra. When this evolved technique struck the disciples' defensive barrier, it didn't simply overpower it through superior force. Instead, it seemed to communicate with the underlying dimensional frequencies, convincing them to realign with natural patterns rather than the corrupted configuration Zamasu had imposed. The disciple screamed, not in physical pain but in what appeared to be existential terror as the corrupted divine energy infusing their form began to separate from their mortal vessel, Una. BLE to maintain cohesion against Naruto's harmonic disruption. Impossible, they gasped as their form began to disintegrate, corrupted energy dispersing into ambient space. The prophet promised ascension beyond mortal limitations. Your prophet lied, Kushina stated flatly, chains immobilizing the second disciple while systematically dismantling the energy structures binding them to their corrupted power source. Dimensional manipulation always exacts a cost. Basic principle of equivalent exchange. Marcarita, rather than directly engaging in combat, had positioned herself at precise mathematical intervals around the ritual formation. Her staff traced complex patterns in the air, creating a counter-geometric array that gradually stabilized the tiers from their outer boundaries inward. Their connection to Zamasu is weakening, she observed. The corruption is fundamentally unstable when separated from its source. Continue the harmonic disruption. The third disciple, observing the defeat of their companions, abruptly changed tactics. Instead of continuing the ritual or engaging directly, they plunged both hands into the nearest dimensional tear, allowing corrupted energy to flow directly into their form. "If we cannot complete the convergence, we shall at least deliver the prophet's message," they declared as their body began to distort horrifically, limbs elongating beyond natural proportions as the corrupted power overwhelmed their physical form. "They're attempting forced assimilation of raw dimensional energy," Marcarita warned, genuine alarm evident in her typically composed demeanor. "This will create an uncontrolled dimensional implosion." Kushina reacted instantly, chains redirecting toward the transforming disciple with precise determination. "Uzumaki sealing technique. Dimensional anchor," she called out, hands forming seals Naruto had never witnessed but somehow recognized at a fundamental level. Her chakra chains took on new properties, glowing with red-gold energy that contained complex sealing scripts spiraling along their lengths. As they surrounded the distorting disciple, they didn't simply restrain but began systematically extracting the corrupted dimensional energy, channeling it through the sealing matrix encoded within the chains themselves. "Supporting," Naruto called out, instinctively understanding what she attempted. His hands moved through complementary seals, silver-gold energy extending to reinforce the extraction pattern Kushina had established. What happened next surprised even Marcarita. As their techniques connected, genetic resonance created unexpected synergy. Naruto's integrated divine chakra energy naturally complemented Kushina's dimensional sealing expertise, forming a containment system neither could have created independently. The disciple's distorted form gradually stabilized, corrupted energy extracted and neutralized through the combined Uzumaki sealing matrix. Within moments, what remained was merely an unconscious mortal vessel, the corrupted divine essence completely removed. Extraordinary cooperation, Marcarita noted as she completed her stabilization of the dimensional tiers. "Yo, Her energy signatures harmonized automatically despite never having trained together, genetic memory transcending dimensional boundaries. The immediate threat contained, attention turned to the diamonds. Ional tears still suspended throughout the district. Though no longer actively growing, they remained dangerous breaches in reality that required addressing. Standard sealing won't work on tiers this extensive. Kushina assessed professionally, chakra chains retracting as she conserved energy. In my dimension, we developed specialized techniques for similar situations. She stepped toward the nearest tear, hands moving through an elaborate sequence of seals before pressing both palms against the edges of the distortion. Uzumaki art. Dimensional suturing. Red gold chakra flowed from her hands into the tear, not attacking it directly but tracing its edges with precise energy that encouraged natural healing of the dimensional fabric. Like stitching a wound closed, her technique guided reality to reconnect across the breach rather than forcing it closed through external pressure. Fascinating methodology, Marcarita commented, observing closely. Similar in principle to the Harmony C approach the Hokage developed independently, guiding rather than compelling dimensional realignment. Naruto moved to another tear, instinctively adapting Kushina's technique through his unique integrated energy system. Silver gold power flowed through his hands as he traced the dimensional wound, encouraging reality's natural healing processes with gentle guidance rather than force. It works, he realized with quiet amazement. The dimensional fabric wants to heal itself, it just needs the right encouragement. Fundamental principle of interdimensional warfare, Kushina explained as she moved methodically to the next breach. Reality possesses inherent self-correcting properties. Work with these natural tendencies rather than against them. Working in coordinated tandem that belied their lack of shared history. Naruto and Kushina moved through the district systematically closing each dimensional tear. Marcarita provided oversight, occasionally adjusting their techniques when particularly complex distortions required specialized attention, but largely allowing them to develop their natural working rhythm. As the final tear sealed under their combined efforts, a profound silence fell across the eastern district, the unsettling dimensional pressure that had permeated the area finally dissipating completely. Assessment. Naruto asked Marcarita, professional habit seeking confirmation of mission success. The angel completed a thorough scan with her staff before responding. Dimensional stability restored to baseline parameters. Residual corruption neutralized. The disciples' mortal vessels remain viable but purged of divine contamination. Kushina surveyed their work with the critical eye of a veteran dimensional operative. Clean closure. No fraying at junction points. Stability should hold unless directly targeted again. Anbu teams had arrived during the operation, establishing a secure perimeter and evacuating civilians from potentially affected areas. Sasuke materialized beside Naruto, having overseen the broader security response. 3 more disciples attempted similar rituals in other districts, he reported concisely. All contained. No casualties. Coordinated attack, Kushina observed, professional assessment cutting through unnecessary discussion. Testing defenses, probing for weaknesses, evaluating response capabilities. Agreed, Sasuke nodded, studying her with undisguised curiosity though professional courtesy prevented direct questioning of her identity. Their techniques were deliberately varied across different locations, experimenting with approaches rather than maximizing effectiveness. Naruto made introductions succinctly, knowing Sasuke would require at minimum basic operational context. Kushina Uzumaki, dimensional variant from a parallel timeline, specialized in interdimensional warfare against Kagaya's forces. To his credit, Sasuke absorbed this extraordinary information with nothing more than a slightly raised eyebrow. Your sealing techniques proved effective against the dimensional tiers. Different methodology than our standard approaches. Different problems require different solutions, Kushina replied simply, apparently equally comfortable with Sasuke's characteristic economy of communication. As cleanup operations commenced and Anbu secured the unconscious disciples for interrogation, Naruto found himself observing Kushina with growing fascination. This dimensional variant of his mother moved with the absolute confidence of someone who had faced apocalyptic threats repeatedly and survived through skill rather than luck. Her techniques, clearly Uzumaki in foundation but evolved through necessities he could only imagine, represented approaches to dimensional manipulation his world had never developed. Most striking was how naturally their fighting styles had complemented each other despite never having trained together, genetic memory manifesting through combat synchronization. "You fought well," she commented, catching his observational gaze. "Unusual energy integration, but effective application. Your divine power naturally harmonizes with traditional chakra rather than overwhelming it." Still learning to control it properly, Naruto admitted. "Marcarita says I'm developing techniques that shouldn't be possible according to established cosmic theory. Breaking rule. Less is apparently an Uzumaki trait that transcends dimensions," Kushina responded with that ghost of a smile that transformed her battle-hardened features momentarily. Marcarita approached, having Co-MP led at her final analysis of the stabilized area. "The disciples' attack, while contained, represents strategic escalation. Zamasu is testing new methodologies for corrupting dimensional boundaries. Heil gathering tactical intelligence on our response capabilities. The 5-cage summit becomes even more crucial now," Naruto noted grimly. "These attacks are expanding beyond Konoha to other nations. We need coordinated response protocols across all shinobi territories. I can provide technical specifications for dimensional monitoring systems," Kushina offered pragmatically. "My dimension developed early warning networks for detecting breaches before full manifestation." Naruto nodded appreciation. "That would be invaluable. The other cage are arriving within hours. Your expertise cool. Significantly impact our defensive planning." As they began moving back toward the village center, Marcarita fell into step beside them, staff occasionally scanning residual energy patterns in their surroundings. "The dimensional variance presence appears to strengthen local reality cohesion," she observed with scientific precision. "Her adapted physiology naturally counteracts destabilizing influences, perhaps why she was drawn to this specific timeline during her transit." "Meaning?" Naruto prompted, having learned that Marcarita's observations often contained layers of significance beyond their surface meaning. "Meaning her arrival may not be coincidental but fundamentally connected to your own transformation," the angel clarified. "The dimensional rifts, your awakening of ultra instinct, and now the appearance of a genetically resonant counterpart with specialized dimensional expertise. These events demonstrate pattern consistency beyond statistical probability." Kushina absorbed this assessment with thoughtful consideration. Dimensional convergence often follows pathways of least resistance. Genetic resonance creates natural connection points between parallel timelines. "Precisely," Marcarita confirmed. "Your physiological adaptation to interdimensional transit likely created natural affinity with this specific timeline, drawn to the strongest genetic resonance point, which would be the Hokage." The implications of this theory hung between them as they continued toward the administrative center where preparations for the 5-cage summit were already underway. If Kushina's arrival was indeed connected to Naruto's divine awakening through some cosmic principle beyond coincidence, it suggested larger patterns at work, a structured unfolding of events rather than random dimensional accidents. "The question becomes whether Zamasu anticipated this convergence," Marcarita continued after a thoughtful pause. "His disciples referenced a prophet with foreknowledge of events, suggesting temporal perception beyond conventional limitations. In my dimension, Kagaya demonstrated limited precognitive capabilities regarding dimensional shifts," Kushina offered. "Possible similar principle operating through different methodologies." As they reached the Hokage Tower, the conversation paused as operational necessities took precedence. Reports required processing, security arrangements needed finalization, and diplomatic protocols for the imminent cage summit demanded attention. Through it all, Naruto found himself increasingly aware of how seamlessly Kushina integrated into their operational structure, offering insights when relevant but respecting established command hierarchies despite her obvious expertise. Several hours later, with immediate CIS management complete and summit preparations finalized, Naruto finally had opportunity for more personal conversation with this dimensional variant of his mother. They stood on the tower's observation deck, overlooking a village now returned to apparent normalcy despite the extraordinary events of the morning. "In your dimension," he began, curiosity finally overcoming professional restraint. "What happened to Konoha after the Third Shinobi War?" Kushina considered the question, violet eyes distant with memories of a reality he would never know. "Minato died during the war's final phase. Assassination mission that succeeded but at cost of the entire team. I was not coping well when Kagaya's faction made their move 3 months later. The understated description of grief couldn't hide the shadow that crossed her features, a pain still carried despite the years since. The QB attack happened differently. Without Minato's sealing expertise, containment failed catastrophically. Half of Konoha destroyed in a single night. She leaned against the railing, gaze tracking across a village layout both familiar and alien to her experiences. Rebuilding took years. Different architectural approach, more defensive fortifications, specialized sealing barriers integrated throughout the infrastructure. When Kagaya emerged 7 years later, we were better prepared than most villages, but still. She trailed off, the unspoken devastation hanging in the air between them. You survived, Naruto observed quietly. Adapted, fought back, always. The single word carried absolute determination. The unbreakable will he recognized from the few interactions he'd had with his own mother's chakra remnants. Uzumaki's stubbornness, impossible to kill completely. A moment of connection passed between them, not the bond of mother and son they had never truly been to each other, but recognition of shared qualities that transcended their dimensional separation. Same determination, same refusal to surrender, same core principles wrapped in different life experiences. Your fighting style, Naruto commented, shifting to more technical ground that might feel safer for both of them. The chakra chains are similar to techniques my mother used in this dimension, but you've evolved them specifically for dimensional warfare. Kushina nodded, apparently more comfortable discussing combat methodology than emotional history. Necessity-driven innovation. Discovered Uzumaki sealing techniques naturally counter certain types of dimensional distortion. Developed specialized applications over years of active deployment. Her formal speech patterns relaxed slightly as she warmed to the technical subject. The chains provide perfect delivery system for complex sealing arrays. Each link can contain independent formula while maintaining connectivity throughout the structure. Could you teach me? Naruto asked, genuine interest evident. My sealing techniques are functional but basic compared to what you demonstrated today. Something like surprise flickered across her features, perhaps at being positioned as teacher rather than interdimensional curiosity. You have both Uzumaki and Namikaze genetic predisposition for advanced sealing. With your integrated energy system, you could potentially develop applications beyond what exists in either of our dimensions. Before their conversation could continue, Hinata appeared at the entrance to the observation deck, Byakugan active and still carrying that silver luminescence that had become permanent since her exposure to divine energy. Naruto-kun, she greeted with characteristic gentle warmth before her gaze shifted to Kushina, recognition immediate despite never having been introduced. Kushina-san, your chakra signature is unmistakable, though dimensionally shifted from historical records. Naruto performed introductions, explaining Hinata's evolved visual capabilities as Kushina studied the Hyuga with professional assessment. Your visual perception transcends standard dimensional boundaries, Kushina noted with immediate recognition. Similar adaptations occurred in specialized sensors from my dimensi, on after prolonged exposure to interdimensional energies. Hinata nodded, Byakugan scanning Kushina's physiological structure with precision impossible before her evolution. Your cellular structure contains temporal markers consistent with multiple dimensional transits. The pattern suggests deliberate adaptation rather than incidental exposure. Correct assessment, Kushina acknowledged with professional respect. Specialized conditioning developed over years of interdimensional operations. Cellular structure gradually adapts to process transitional stress without degradation. Hinata turned to Naruto, seamlessly shifting from scientific observation to practical matters. The cage has arrived early. He's requesting preliminary consultation before the formal summit begins. Of course, Naruto nodded. Leadership responsibilities immediately taking precedence. Please show Kushina-san to the secure quarters Shikamaru arranged. We'll continue our technical discussion later. Kushina accepted this prioritization without comment, the brief glimpse of personal openness receding behind professional composure. Understood. We'll review dimensional monitoring specifications while awaiting further consultation. As Naruto departed to meet with Gaara, Hinata guided Kushina toward the accommodations prepared for her. Their conversation drifted back to him as he descended the stairs, Hinata's gentle inquiry about Kushina's dimensional experiences met with gradually warming responses as the redhead apparently recognized a genuinely compassionate spirit rather than mere professional courtesy. The interaction sparked unexpected warmth in Naruto's chest, two people important to him in profoundly different ways finding connection despite the extraordinary circumstances. Perhaps interdimensional barriers weren't the only boundaries being healed in the process of these cosmic developments. The 5-cage summit proceeded with remarkable efficiency given the unprecedented nature of the topics under discussion. Gaara, Darui, Kuretsuchi, and Chojuro had all experienced dimensional disturbances within their territories, none as severe as Konoha's but concerning a new GH to warrant immediate unified response. These attacks follow strategic pattern recognition, Gaara observed in his characteristically precise manner. Each dimensional breach specifically targeted historical sites of significance rather than population centers. Same in the Land of Lightning, Darui confirmed. Ancient temple complexes, prehistoric monument sites, locations with historical chakra significance. Minimal civilian impact but systematically focused on sites with historical energy resonance. Naruto exchanged glances with Shikamaru, both recognizing the implications simultaneously. They're mapping the dimensional energy network of our entire world, Naruto concluded. Identifying natural power convergence points that exist across multiple realities. Exactly what Kage-A's faction did in my dimension before launching full-scale invasion, came Kushina's voice from the doorway, where she stood flanked by Anbu guards who had apparently escorted her to the summit at Shikamaru's request. The other cage turned toward the newcomer with varying degrees of surprise and suspicion, which Naruto addressed immediately with concise introduction of her identity and relevant expertise. To their credit, the leaders of the shinobi world had faced enough extraordinary circumstances in recent years that a dimensional variant of Kushina Uzumaki was processed as unusual but not beyond comprehension. You've experienced this exact tactical approach before, Kuretsuchi noted, cutting directly to the operational significance rather than dwelling on interdimensional curiosities. Identical methodology, Kushina confirmed, approaching the central map table where dimensional disturbance locations had been marked across the shinobi territories. They're establishing a comprehensive resonance map for transitional harmonics. Her finger traced connections between seemingly unrelated sites, revealing geometric patterns invisible to those without her specialized experience. Each location represents a natural dimensional thin point, areas where reality connection between parallel worlds naturally exists at higher frequencies. For what purpose? Chojuro asked, adjusting his glasses as he studied the emerging pattern. Mass transit preparation, Kushina replied grimly. Individual breaches are manageable. Simultaneous activation of an entire network creates cascading dimensional overlay that can transport entire armies instantly across vast territories. The strategic implications silenced the room momentarily as leaders processed the scale of potential threat this represented. Not isolated incursions but coordinated invasion across every major nation simultaneously, bypassing traditional defensive barriers through dimensional manipulation. Your dimension developed countermeasures, Gaara inquired pragmatically, focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on the threat itself. Partial success, Kushina acknowledged with professional honesty. Specia, List ceiling arrays deployed at primary convergence points. Disruption techniques for destabilizing transit corridors during activation phase. Early warning systems for detecting pre-breach energy accumulation. She moved to the map, hands forming a quick sequence that created a chakra projection overlaying the marked disturbance sites. Based on current pattern distribution, I estimate approximately 27 additional target locations they haven't yet activated. With precise efficiency, she marked these predicted targets across the shinobi territories, each positioned at mathematical precise intervals within the emerging network. The pattern revealed deliberate strategy rather than opportunistic attacks, confirming Zamasu's operations followed calculated methodology rather than reactive improvisation. We need coordinated defensive protocols implemented across all nations immediately, Naruto concluded, leadership experience translating threat assessment into actionable strategy. Kushina-san can provide technical specifications for monitoring systems and disruption techniques based on her dimension's experience. Agreed, Darui nodded, the Raikage's military backgrew. ND recognizing solid tactical analysis regardless of its interdimensional source. Standardized response teams with specialized training deployed to priority locations. I can provide training protocols, Kushina offered. Accelerated program focusing on essential detection and containment techniques. 2 weeks minimum for basic proficiency. The summit transitioned into detailed operational planning. Kushina's expertise providing invaluable foundation for developing unified response strategies across previously competitive nations. Throughout the proceedings, Naruto observed how the other Cage gradually shifted from initial skepticism to genuine respect for her tactical insights, her dimensional origin becoming secondary to her obvious mastery of relevant techniques. When the formal Seijan concluded after several intensive hours, Gaara remained behind as the others departed to implement agreed protocols within their territories. The Cage's quiet intensity had always made him particularly perceptive regarding underlying patterns others might miss. Your dimensional visitor represents more than coincidental arrival, he observed once they were alone except for Shikamaru and Kushina herself. Her specific expertise precisely matches our current crisis requirements. Marcarita suggested similar conclusions, Naruto confirmed. Dimensional convergence following paths of least resistance. Drawn to genetic resonance points. The timing feels deliberate, Gaara continued, pale eyes studying Kushina with thoughtful assessment. Not merely fortunate coincidence but orchestrated necessity. Kushina met his gaze with equal intensity. Dimensional transit isn't entirely random. Underlying patterns guide convergence toward natural harmony points. My arrival here likely followed established cosmic principles rather than arbitrary chance. The question becomes whether Zamasu anticipated this convergence, Shikamaru mused, echoing Marcarita's earlier concern. His D.I.S. Sipples referenced prophetic foreknowledge of events unfolding according to predetermined patterns. In my experience, Kushina offered, dimensional strategists often demonstrate limited precognition regarding convergence events. The patterns themselves become predictable to those who study them extensively. Gaara nodded thoughtfully, suggesting our opposition possesses sophisticated understanding of interdimensional principles, potentially anticipating our counter-strategies before implementation. Possible, Kushina acknowledged, though anticipation doesn't guarantee prevention. Knowing potential futures doesn't ensure control over their manifestation. The conversation paused as Marcarita arrived, having monitored the dimensional rift during the summit proceedings. Her expression carried unusual seriousness that immediately captured attention. The rift is displaying novel energy signatures, she reported without preamble. Harmonic resonance patterns suggesting communication across dimensional boundaries rather than merely physical transit. Meaning, Naruto prompted. Meaning Zamasu is likely coordinating operations across multiple dimensions simultaneously, Marcarita clarified. The disciples' activities here represent merely one facet of a multidimensional strategy unfolding across parallel timelines. Kushina's expression hardened with grim recognition. Kagaya employed similar methodology in later conflict stages. Simultaneous operations across dimensional variants create compounding tactical advantages through shared intelligence and resource distribution. Can we disrupt these communications? Shikamaru asked, mind immediately seeking countermeasures. Theoretically possible though practically challenging, Marcarita assessed. The fundamental frequencies operate through natural dimensional resonance rather than artificial transmission methods. In my dimension, we developed partial jamming techniques, Kushina offered. Not complete disruption but sufficient signal degradation to compromise coordination effectiveness. Implementation requirements, Gaara inquired, ever practical. Specialized ceiling array positioned WI. Thin proximity to the primary dimensional rift, Kushina explained. Continuous chakra application from multiple sources maintaining precise harmonic interference patterns. As they discussed technical specifications for this potential countermeasure, Naruto found himself once again struck by the natural integration of Kushina's expertise with their developing response strategies. Her arrival, their cosmic coincidence or deliberate convergence, provided precisely the specialized knowledge they required at exactly the moment of greatest necessity. The discussion continued late into evening, tactical planning gradually giving way to implementation logistics as Shikamaru coordinated with international response teams through secure communication channels. Eventually, Only Naruto and Kushina remained in the conference room, surrounded by maps, technical diagrams, and the residual energy of intensive strategic planning. "You've built something impressive here," Kushina observed quietly, gesture encompassing not just the physical space but the alliance it represented. 5 nations working in genuine cooperation rather than temporary convenience. "Different from my timeline. It didn't come easily," Naruto acknowledged. "Memories of hard-won peace agreements and carefully nurtured trust built over years of persistent diplomacy. We nearly destroyed ourselves before learning to work together. Some constants transcend dimensional boundaries," she noted with that ghost of a smile that periodically softened her battle-hardened features. "Humanity learning cooperation only when facing extinction. Same in my world, just less successful outcome." The comment invited questions Naruto had respectfully avoided earlier, about the precise fate of her dimension, the extent of Kagaya's dominion. The circumstances that had forced her into interdimensional warfare rather than traditional conflict. Yet something in her expression suggested these were wounds still too raw for casual discussion. Histories carried like physical weights rather than mere stories. Instead, he shifted toward more immediate concerns. "The chakra chain techniques you mentioned earlier, would tomorrow be too soon to begin instruction? If these attacks are escalating, every additional defensive capability matters." The redirection appeared welcome as Kushina nodded, professional focus replacing the momentary shadow of darker memories. "Morning training would be optimal. Your integrated energy system will require specialized adaptation of traditional Uzumaki methodologies." She hesitated briefly before adding, "Your chakra signature contains elements of QB integration unlike anything in my dimension. How does this affect your sealing capabilities?" "Kurama and I are partners," Naruto explained, realizing she would have experienced a very different relationship with the 9 tails in her timeline. Complete synchronization rather than containment. His chakra flows alongside mine nature. Ally rather than requiring forced extraction. Surprise registered briefly in her violet eyes. Clearly, such harmonious integration represented significant divergence from her dimensional experiences. Fascinating adaptation. "In my timeline, Jinchuriki relationships remained primarily antagonistic with limited cooperation during extreme circumstances. Kurama can hear you, by the way," Naruto mentioned with slight amusement. "He's curious about his counterpart in your dimension. Ask if I'm still as magnificent across realities," Kurama prompted with characteristic pride thinly disguised as casual interest. When Naruto relayed this query, something unexpected happened. Kushina actually laughed, the sound startling in its genuine warmth after hours of professional detachment. "Some thin GS truly transcend dimensional boundaries. Yes, even in my timeline, the QB maintained impressive self-appreciation despite catastrophic circumstances. The momentary lightness felt precious amid the weight of dimensional threats and cosmic complications. For just a breath, they connected not as Hokage and dimensional operative, not as genetic counterparts from parallel timelines, but simply as 2 individuals finding brief common ground through shared recognition of a familiar spirit's unchanging nature. The moment passed naturally as Kushina returned to tactical considerations, discussing training ground requirements and specialized materials needed for the following day's instruction. Yet something had shifted subtly, a small but meaningful step toward genuine connection rather than merely operational alliance. As they finalized arrangements and prepared to depart for well-earned rest, Marcarita appeared once more, her expression unusually contemplative even for an angel's typically composed demeanor. "I've completed comprehensive analysis of the dimensional visitor's physiological structure," she announced without preamble. "The results present unexpected implications for our current circumstances." "Meaning?" Naruto prompted, familiar now with the angel's tendency toward clinical precision rather than direct explanation. "Meaning her cellular adaptation to interdimensional transit has created unique resonance with the divine energy now flowing through your system," Marcarita clarified, turning toward Kushina directly. "Your repeated exposure to dimensional bone Darius has fundamentally altered your chakra network in patterns that naturally harmonize with ultra-instinct frequency." Kushina absorbed this information with characteristic adaptability. "Practical implications. Your presence naturally stabilizes the Hokage's divine energy integration," Marcarita explained. "Genetic resonance combined with your dimensional adaptation creates harmonic freq. NCIES that facilitate smoother transition between chakra and divine ki states. She turned to Naruto. During this morning's engagement, your control over the integrated energy improved 27.3% compared to previous implementations. The dimensional variance proximity appears to function as a natural resonance stabilizer. The implications hung between them, their connection transcended mere genetic similarity or operational compatibility. At an energetic level beyond conventional understanding, Kushina's presence physically stabilized Naruto's evolving powers through natural harmonic resonance. That explains the unexpected synchronization during combat, Kushina noted pragmatically, immediately focusing on operational relevance rather than emotional implications. Techniques aligned automatically despite no prior coordination. Quote, precisely, Marcarita confirmed. This natural resonance could potentially accelerate the Hokage's mastery of Ultra Instinct significantly if properly utilized during training protocols. The Angel's clinical assessment couldn't quite mask the scientific fascination underlying her analysis. Dimensional convergence creating complementary energy harmonics between genetic variants represents unprecedented opportunity for advanced integration methodologies. Naruto processed these revelations with growing understanding of cosmic patterns beyond coincidence. Kushina's arrival, her specific expertise, her unique physiological adaptations, her genetic resonance with his own energy system, represented perfect alignment of necessary elements precisely when most needed. We'll incorporate this resonance factor into tomorrow's training, he decided, leadership instincts translating theoretical potential into practical application. If your presence naturally stabilizes the integrated energy state, we should maximize that advantage while developing new techniques. Kushina nodded agreement, professional pragmatism accepting these extraordinary circumstances with the adaptability that had clearly become essential for survival in her dimension. Efficient utilization of available resources. Will modify training protocols to optimize resonance effects. As they departed the conference room, Marcarita falling into step beside them, Naruto found himself contemplating the increasingly apparent pattern underlying recent events. The dimensional rift, his awakening of Ultra Instinct, Kushina's arrival with precisely relevant expertise, each development fitting together with mathematical precision rather than random occurrence. Whether cosmic coincidence or deliberate design, these convergences suggested purpose beyond chance, a pattern unfolding according to principles transcending conventional understanding of causality. The question remained whether they were merely responding to events already predetermined or actively shaping possibilities through their choices and actions. As stars emerged above a village now standing at the intersection of dimensions, universes, and cosmic forces beyond mortal comprehension, Naruto accepted one certainty amid countless unknowns: whatever came next would require everything they could bring to bear: Uzumaki determination, divine power, dimensional expertise, and the unbreakable will that seemed to transcend all boundaries, whether between dimensions or between hearts finding connection across impossible divides. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.